Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 254. That's Planet Extra Podcast. I'm Tesla Chadello, a host of Planet America on ABC Australia, and this is an official podcast of the ABC. So say hi to the Ombudsman for me. I'm Pep. We cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube at The Pep with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel, and you can find highlights there as well now. And we're on Facebook at The Chaz from Planet America channel. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs, and if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we're likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPCHASDRDAVE. And if you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lucky privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And I am replying to them all as well, although not this week. Been a busy week. Easter holidays. What's not busy about that for people? I'm a contractor. And do not forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. And we are recording this at 9:47 p.m. on Tuesday, the 7th of April. Or that's like 7:47 a.m. on Tuesday morning, East Coast time. So, Jared, our special guest. So let's introduce Jared Mondschein, the man himself who will not raise the stakes on inconsequential views. I hope. You're not going to do that, are you, Jared?
I would never dream of doing something like that.
Hi, Jared.
Hello there. Thanks for having me back again. I really appreciate it. And I should clarify that I work at the United States Study Center. And
everything you say is on behalf of them.
Absolutely not. I couldn't be further removed from an official view, and I do this podcast to my own detriment.
Thank you so much, Jared. Jared, what are you grateful for other than the fact your bosses probably don't listen to this podcast?
And I pray they never do. I am grateful for one of your readers, Leon.
Oh.
He was talking about the sort of epithets based on body parts.
Yes.
You're talking about Hegseth energy.
Yes.
And you were talking about how some of your friends were saying what type of energy Hegseth gave off. And then Leon highlighted how we shouldn't use gendered or racial or gender terms, and how I think the quote is body shaming is unacceptable even if directed at vile people.
Yeah.
And I love that, but I wanted to expand it because I find that a lot of times we feel like if we are punching up, somehow it's appropriate to use gendered, but also racial terms. And at the end of the day, if we do want to, as Martin Luther King says, judge people by the content of their skin, not
content of their character.
Yeah.
I think you might have missed what he was getting at for a second there.
This is what I get for recording at 9:50 at night. The content of their character, not the color of their skin or their gender. I think we need to move beyond, being accepting of using gendered and racial terms. And that includes racial terms that a lot of people use more freely than others, including like white trash. I just don't think that being comfortable saying that all the time is necessarily beneficial to moving into a society where race matters less to one's identity. So thank you, Leon. I really appreciate that, and especially coming from an intersex expert. And I love that because it really, in my view, is important to not define people by just their gender and their race.
I love Leon's work too. He's very, very tolerant. I sometimes test that. And, I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I am grateful for daylight savings ending. That's what I'm grateful for a few reasons. Number one, I love the extra hour of sleep you get that weekend. That's awesome. I can always do an extra hour of sleep. Number two, I love winter. It means we're getting closer to it. Everything gets a little bit cooler because it's just a little bit more darkness. I love darkness. Hello, darkness, my old friend. You are back. Literal darkness, not depression, actual darkness. And, I love being able to go on night walks at 5 p.m. I love it. My dog loves it too. We're great fans of the night walk. I love being in a 14-hour ahead time zone from the target of my reading rather than a 15-hour ahead time zone. And the reason for that is because it means the day starts at 8 p.m. in Sydney. That's when 6 a.m. starts in America. They start rolling out the articles. And it means that if I'm staying up till 4 or 5 a.m., I've basically done the day. Like there's just a few dregs at the end of that. So which is great. Oh, I love it.
Can I ask, where do you stand on permanent daylight savings?
Look, nothing's going to make the summer months less hellish for me. Why
do you live in Sydney?
Why do I live in Australia? It's a great question. Anyway.
You could move to colder parts of Australia.
Yeah. Look, we'll see. Unfortunately, the PEP studio is here.
That's it. The PEP studio.
Maybe when I retire. Anyway,
it's too bad that technology is so limiting. You can't do it from anywhere anymore.
My point is, though, life choices aside, my point is that every year when daylight savings ends, I get a little bit happier, and I'm quite grateful this week. So thank you very much.
I'm not here representing the U.S. Study Center whatsoever, but I do have to highlight that a colleague of mine named Sam Garrett published on daylight savings, and he has something I can put in the show notes called Daylight Savers or Night Wasters, the Case Against Permanent Daylight Savings Time in the United States.
Do you agree with Sam?
I wish I cared enough to have a strong opinion on this.
Yeah.
I really don't, but he does, and I love him for that. And you know who else has strong opinions on this?
Who?
Marco Rubio, the Sun King.
Of course.
So, yeah, I highly recommend reading this because Sam cares about things like this in a way that I never could.
I don't understand why people who live in Florida would really care at all. I mean, isn't just there plenty of sun in Florida? You don't really need to care about daylight saving one way or another.
Yeah, I wish I remembered.
So like in Australia, in Queensland, they don't even have daylight saving because who gives a shit? Because it's Queensland. It's just sun all the time.
Arizona doesn't either.
Yeah.
I think there's one other state, and I'm sure I'll be corrected, that doesn't do daylight savings. What really gets me is the when I try to go to where is it, Brisbane, and then they do have it. It's like half an hour. Just trying to schedule life around that. Insane.
I think you're talking about Adelaide. Adelaide's a half-hour time zone.
Oh, Adelaide, but then Brisbane doesn't line up?
Brisbane's Queensland, it doesn't have daylight saving. Yeah.
Why? Why any of this?
Although, ironically, given what I just said was scientifically illiterate. Saying, it's sun all the time, it's Queensland, because actually it's closer to the equator, which means there's less sun in summer than there is in Hobart. But anyway, it's hotter. You know what I mean. Let's move on. This is not a climatology podcast. Just one correction. I'm not going to do... Actually, I'm going to do a bit of correspondence because we were just talking... Jared, whenever he comes in, we talk for like an hour before we start doing the podcast because we just get along really well. And we were talking AI, so I'm going to pull out some correspondence on AI, which I wasn't going to do because I reckon you'll be able to add to it. But before we do that, I want to do one quick correction. Last week, I showed you a graph in my stats nugget, my This Is Not Normal stats nugget. It was from a Politico article. And what it was showing you was that in terms of disaster requests rejected by the Trump administration, well, all the administrations until now, including the first Trump administration, rejected disaster applications, FEMA disaster applications from red states and blue states at the same rate, which was about 15 to 20%, maybe 10% off memory. And then this Trump administration was rejecting Republican state requests at the same rate, but Democratic state requests, it was rejecting at a much, much, much higher rate.
I sure believe you said it was impeachable.
I did. And look, I'm not saying that was wrong, but what I am saying is more complicated than I thought. And so I want to give you the complication because this is PEP. I was reading The Federalist, which is a publication that prints a lot of junk, but every now and then there's an article there you never see anywhere else. Like, I don't mean like an article you prefer not to read. I mean, somewhere you go, oh my God, this actually is really useful information. I haven't seen this anywhere else because they've got a really low standard for what they attack. I mean, it sounds like what they publish. It sounds like I'm having a go, but I'm actually not. Like, they genuinely do accept all comers. And that means sometimes they will print something that you just won't see anywhere else at all. And it's really, you're really glad you read it. And this is an example of someone who's just a data dude who just broke that down and said that Politico story was rubbish and here's why. And I was going through it and I was going, this guy is right. Like, they're absolutely spot on. And so let me tell you, the first point they made was that Politico said it was based on a review of 2,500 natural disaster declarations. And they said, now, when you look at the actual data, yes, they had reviewed 2,500 natural disaster declarations, but the only ones they counted for the purposes of these stats were major disaster declarations, which are different to everything else. What that means is their sample size is not 2,500, it's 45. All of a sudden that means that those stats are a lot less reliable. And that's a great point. There's something that Dr. Davis said endlessly. I know, you're polling your stats. 45 is not a big sample size. So that's the first point they made. The second point they made is, I did tell you their definition of a Democrat-led state, but they said, we actually crunched the numbers depending on what your definition is of a democratically led state. And there is a difference. So let me show you their numbers. And I did check these. So if we look here, these are the denial rates by 3 different measures. Let me explain the measures for those listening. On the right, we've got by Democratic-led or Republican-led metric. The metric they're referring to is the one that Politico used, which was if they have a governor of one party and 2 senators from the same party. So if they've got a Democratic governor and 2 Democratic senators, they're Democratic-led. The Republican governor and 2 Republican senators, they're Republican-led. If they have neither, if they have a mix or they have neither, they're not counted in the stats at all. So by that metric, you've got just under 25% denials of the blue states and just over 10% denials of the red states. The middle one is just looking at the governor. Is it a Republican governor or is it a Democrat governor? By those numbers, 25% denial for blue states and 12% denial for red states. And the third metric is by election result. Did Harris or did Trump win that state? 20% denial rate, 21% denial rate for blue states, 12% for red states. So really, they're different numbers depending on what metric you use. But basically, it's 20% denial for blue states and 10% denial for Trump states. So there is a difference. But it's much less difference than the major disaster difference, which was 60 points difference. And I personally think these numbers are more important than the major ones because of the sample size. Now, I'm not saying that Politico has been dodgy, but I am saying that I think that was not a full picture. And so I just wanted you guys to know.
Thank you.
So I've just shared that with you, and you can make up your own mind based on that. Now, let's talk about this corresponds quickly from Anthropic, from 3 weeks ago. We talked about this on PEP. I was hanging it there. I haven't had a chance to put it even in the correspondence extras. I wasn't going to do correspondence on this one. I'm going to save that for the next PEP, but I'll just do this one with you, Jared. First of all, Degrassi objects to me chiding the Trump administration for bitching about Anthropic's fine print when it was there at the time they signed the contract in the first place. I said, well, you should have looked at it. And Degrassi makes the point, apologies, I'm going to have a Chaz to be fair moment.
To be fair.
Anthropic's Claude began working with the US Department of Defense in 2024, i.e. the previous administration. It was upon the previous administration to review Anthropic's fine print, not the current one. On the other hand, they do say, let's remember the December 2025 executive order, United States AI companies must be free to innovate without cumbersome regulation. There's a good point, Degrassi, as well. But yes, you're right, Degrassi. I was unfair on the administration, so I just want to put that out there. Mark writes, this is about Anthropic wanting to control how the products they sell to the Pentagon are used. That's different to say Lockheed Martin when they sell the government a jet. We use that analogy. Mark writes, the cost of developing the F-35 was carried by the US government and a number of other contributing countries. Lockheed Martin developed an initial design and built a demonstrator, the X-35, which won a competition against a Boeing competitor. Development costs were then carried by the US Air Force and US Navy, along with contributions from partner countries, including Australia. As far as I'm aware, Anthropic developed Claude using their own money. Does that make a difference to you, Joe?
No,
No?
I don't think that makes a huge difference. I don't have very strong thoughts on this because I still just don't know the technology well enough, and so it's hard when you do have to give a lot of opinions. Sometimes I think it's good to just say I don't have a strong one on this one.
That's what Dr. Dave said when we talked about this. Also, Zugam writes, in regards to Anthropic and companies controlling their products, John Deere is known for being very controlling of their tractors. Yeah. It's a very big thing in the right to repair space. And that isn't even an ongoing service, but a standalone product. So a company dictating how its products are used isn't that strange. Though it's interesting to me, as I'm against the controlling nature of John Deere, but now I'm strongly on the other side of the argument with Anthropic.
Yeah. I guess the stakes are a bit higher than a tractor not working because you want to tinker with it versus what AI can do. Again, it's just the quantum of AI and the impact is just, it's hard to like for like difference. And I think John Deere is actually even more egregious than Apple in some ways in terms of right to repair. In terms of who is Apple hurting with their lack of right to repair? It's like podcasters and YouTube.
Steady.
Yeah, John Deere, though, is infamous for their very strict right to repair protocols.
And on my conundrum about whether we trust a CEO to have full control of the power of AI in the future, as opposed to a democratic government, Zay says, private companies will always be superior in developing AI tools. If they can't do business in the US, they're going to move to the EU. If they can't do business in the EU, they're going to move to Japan or South Korea or China. Whoever is willing to let them do what they do is going to get their business. And I guarantee there are many countries out there that are going to want those companies and will bend over backwards to give them royalty status. If Anthropic offered to move their full operations and company to Australia tomorrow, the Australian government would give them literally anything they wanted to make it happen. You can never stop private companies from having this technology. Now, perhaps we get to a point where quantum computers are in the frame too. Well, quantum computers are kind of like nuclear bombs. They're probably always going to require too much to be handled by the average company, and that will likely be where the government line is drawn. I strongly suspect quantum computers will have too great a capability to allow into the hands of regular people. Look, I don't know much about quantum computers. Sounds like a topic for PEP 2032. But what do you think about the point Zay's making that's saying, like, us navel-gazing about whether we want a CEO to be in charge or not? We got no choice. It's going to be a CEO.
To a certain extent, yeah. But again, like so many other technologies, I think government can be a regulator in different ways. I mean, the way the reader talked about moving to the EU, I don't think that's actually very likely because the EU is famous for being self-described as over-regulated, according to a former Italian prime minister who did a review of European regulation. And so I don't think Europe is at the top of the list for Anthropic. I really do think actually Australia is at the top of the list thanks to low sovereign risk, thanks to speaking English, thanks to energy opportunities, including solar. And so I think, and I don't think that when Anthropic was in town just in the last few weeks, I don't think that the Australian government folded and gave them absolutely everything. There are still major sticking points in what Australia wants from Anthropic and the regulations that Anthropic wants changed in Australia.
I would add one thing, and that is I reckon Australia might be near the top of the list, but I don't know what's happened in reality. I've got no idea. But in theory, I would have thought the top of the list is Switzerland.
You're thinking in terms of tech firms, but you have to think of massive amounts of energy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's the number one thing. They don't have enough energy, from what I understand.
Yeah, okay.
I'm by no means an AI expert whatsoever. I highly recommend everyone read the work of my colleagues at the United States Study Center who do this in strategic technology, particularly Olivia Shen, the director of that program. She knows this, but I think it really is energy. That is the number one impediment, from what I understand, to further AI compute, and it is just a race, an unbelievable race for that. And Australia has so many benefits, but at the same time, from what I understand, Australia's copyright law in particular is something that has been a sticking point for AI companies here compared to in the U.S.
And do you have a view of That's it for the correspondence. Do you have a view about the answer to my conundrum before about whether we prefer a potentially useless Congress to be to be making rules about AI, or whether you prefer a potentially psychopathic CEO to be making rules about AI?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in a more immediate sense, and perhaps less impactful, but still tangible, is what you look at has occurred with Starlink, with Elon Musk deciding what Ukraine gets and what Ukraine doesn't get, and having power like that in the hands of a CEO. I don't think is necessarily a fantastic outcome, and democracy is messy. It is slow moving, but it remains the most sustainable. And I still think that what's the Churchill quote on democracy? It's the worst form of government.
Apart from all the rest.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I just think that is part and parcel of what democracy should be doing. The question is, can democracy and the democracies continue to allow for innovation and not be too much of an impediment? And this is one of those things where it's a constant balancing act, and it requires like a lot of work, not only on the part of the companies to be educating lawmakers and optimally educating in a appropriate way, and not simply lobbying and rent seeking, but also the lawmakers to try to educate themselves on this. I think I've seen some promising stories about lawmakers trying to become smarter on this, but I don't know whether they've maintained that. And this is really consequential. I just, as a think tanker, I've read more reports on AI regulation than I can count. But the question is, what actually matters and what actually is going to be impactful? That is a different matter altogether.
Indeed. You wanted to bring something up about AI, didn't you? Because we were chatting about this before.
Yeah, as a former journalist, I feel like I've talked a couple times on the state of media and how it's sad, and how it seems like every time I look at the news, there's another round of layoffs at different news outlets, and I've actually tangibly seen it in my own life in my 9 years being here, how the journalists who call and ask for comment consistently are younger, and it's really shocking how you don't see the gray-haired people like you used to. But one thing that was
you gotta watch PEP.
one thing that really caught my eye that did not get a lot of headlines is the Associated Press themselves said that more than 120 of their staffers had taken buyout offers in the last few days, and it's one of the world's oldest and most influential news organizations, and it's been hugely impactful since the mid 1800s. But what's really important about the Associated Press is it's not one outlet. It is, if you read any local paper in the U.S. or even here, at times you'll see that a majority of the stories, or at least a good amount of them, are actually from wires like the Associated Press. Yeah. Is how you sustain local journalism a lot of times, having these local wires fill in the 2 or 3 reporters who will be on the ground, plus the Associated Press wire stories filling everything else. But what really caught my eye on this, though, beyond the fact that it's shocking that no one is really paying attention to such a key part of, in my view, American democracy losing its capabilities, and the implications of that, is what they said they're going to focus on instead. This is what I'm going to quote here. The news organization is becoming more focused on visual journalism and developing new revenue sources, particularly through companies investing in artificial intelligence to cope with the economic collapse of many legacy news outlets. I don't understand why the Associated Press wants to invest in companies in artificial intelligence. That just really, I find that surprising. Doesn't seem like a sustainable or maybe the wisest of approaches, but it does, in my view, also tell me that they don't see any other opportunities, and that media continues to be challenged by the lack of a sustainable model.
I mean, given their business model is syndication, is there a great demand for syndication of visual Like, they're not even graphics, are they? They're just visualizations.
Yeah, you can go on the Associated Press website and see their video, their AP videos of different items and different places. I don't understand it. I also don't understand why AP would want to play in AI, given that their work is already readily available to everyone. It's not like it's like hidden behind some massive paywall. So perhaps a listener has some insights into how AP could leverage their core competencies for artificial intelligence, but it's beyond me.
How are they losing money? People are still taking their content. Maybe because there's fewer papers.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's the print journalism that sustained the company. It used to be something like a majority of their revenue was from that, and then I think I saw that it's maybe now 10%.
Oh, okay.
So it just keeps decreasing the number of newspapers. And again, I can't emphasize enough how integral this is for democracy. Someone like the Speaker of the House, and we've talked about this before, coming up in Louisiana and leading a law school that went under. There were just, in my view, and many people would say that there were just not enough local journalists in Louisiana to do a deep dive on what exactly happened. We just saw in the New Yorker, they did a deep dive on Ronan Farrow, did a deep dive on Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT or OpenAI, and it's really well resourced, a long read. But it's the type of thing that the New Yorker can finance. The fact that we don't have these on-the-ground journalists means that these people who are not in the top 1% of notable names, they don't get the scrutiny that everyone deserves.
I suppose as well that at this point in time, there's a disproportionate amount of scrutiny going towards one man, and that scrutiny that's not going anywhere else. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jared. I had no idea about that. That's a bit of a concern. Every time you turn around, there's another problem with the media. Let's get into some polling. Whenever you're here, I like to talk about polling. I'll start with the obvious stuff, and then you can give us the Jared specials. Okay. So the obvious stuff, we start with just the Trump approval polling average. This is the 50+1 average, which is the new 538. You can see he's 37.2% approval average, 58.8% disapproval average, so that's minus 21.6 net approval. You can also see, if you're looking at the graph, I'll just describe this for those who are listening. The lines are pretty close to straight lines for a year. There aren't massive jumps and certainly not many backsies. It's just generally the two lines are moving further and further apart. Like if you look at Joe Biden's graph, I don't have it here, but if you look at Joe Biden's graph, you'll see a big jump in his disapproval when the Afghanistan withdrawal happened. There's nothing like that for Trump, although I do know that Strength in Numbers has written an article in the last week where they posited there were 5 or 6 periods of this degradation. They're pretty subtle degradations. The second thing is the average. There are worse numbers than that. YouGov has him at 35% approval, 58% disapproval. Can we show Lockie the graph, the YouGov graph of Trump 2 versus Trump 1 and versus Biden? You can see there, Jared, he's currently at minus 23. That's the dotted line. Trump 1, the same period, was minus 11, and Biden was minus 6. And that was after the Afghanistan. You can see what I talked about with Biden, with the big drop-off during the first year of Afghanistan. That was after the drop-off in Afghanistan. He was still minus 6. And Trump's at minus 23. If you look ahead, Biden, his absolute low point was in the 4th year. I'm assuming that's after the debate.
Yeah.
And that was minus 23. Trump is at the low point of Biden, which was after the debate in his 4th year.
The debate was June?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you ever look there, it's right in the middle of the 4th year. So, and Trump's low point for Trump 1, I think, was minus 17, and that was after January 6. So he's already 6 points lower than he ever was during his first term, and he's matching Biden when people were talking about the 25th Amendment. That's where Trump's at the moment. So that's not good.
Can we just say also, by the way, the Trump 25th Amendment is literally harder than impeachment.
Yes, it is.
I don't know why people think that is like a great means. Just impeach him.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the Republicans aren't going to impeach him, but the Republicans obviously aren't going to do the 25th Amendment either. Yeah, we've talked about this before. The 25th Amendment, they might as well just get rid of it. It's just impossible. It's just never going to happen.
It's basically when the president is comatose. And even then, they can be impeached.
They can be impeached, exactly, yeah. So he's heading for some serious unpopularity records. Do you want to see Trump 2's net approval compared to every president? Because I got it. This graph here is Trump 2 compared to every post-war president. That's him compared to every president since polling existed. And you can see in the first term, he's about, 10 points below Joe Biden. Most of the presidents since World War II were in positive net approval at this point in time in their presidency. There were very few who were negative. They were basically Trump 2, Trump 1, and Joe Biden.
Yeah, I was going to say that gray line between Joe Biden and Trump 2 is Trump 1.
That's right, exactly. He's all-timer there, not looking great. Shall we compare him to second termers? Because presidents are worse during second term. And as you can see, we've got some worse results there. He's basically on par with W. Bush in his second term at this point in time. This was after Katrina. This was the Iraq War going belly up. He's above, he's 15 points net approval above Richard Nixon when Richard Nixon was about to resign after the Watergate scandal. And he's miles behind everyone else. I guess it's congrats to Trump that he's not as badly polling as Richard Nixon just before he was forced to resign by his own party.
Yeah, could be worse. I can't emphasize enough how much the Republicans, especially Roger Ailes at Fox News, decided that what happened to Nixon should never happen again, and the way that the Republicans came after him. And as a result, he went out of his way to create Fox News and to allow for Republicans and conservatives to have a more favorable political future. And I think he's been successful. It worked. Congratulations, Roger Ailes. I hope you're pleased. I hope you're looking up or down, wherever you are, and you're pleased with your works. Even Republican-friendly pollsters at the moment, like RMG Research and the Neapolitan Institute, who I never quote because they're so biased, even they are showing pretty bad news for Trump. He's minus 18 on RMG Research and Neapolitan, and that's just this year, essentially. They were 50-50 all last year, and then this year they've just blown apart. Have you looked at Republicans on the whole? Where do Republicans stand on Donald Trump right now? Republicans? Yeah, not just Republican-friendly polls. No, I understand. Yeah, well, we're actually going to get to that. Let's see it. If you want to talk about it right now, we've got correspondence, which I'll put to you about this. Okay, this is a correspondence from Mike. This is from 2 weeks ago. I've been hanging on to this one. We'd just been talking about a MAGA poll that showed 100% approval of Trump, that. According to MAGA. This is a CNN poll. Hey guys, love the show. Had a question about CNN post everyone's breathlessly reporting on with 100% MAGA approval of Trump. Isn't MAGA a self-selecting group? Anyone not approving of Trump, even if they consider themselves MAGA a month ago, would most likely not consider themselves MAGA now and therefore not be on the MAGA side of the survey. It may not always be 100%, but I would have guessed that to self-identify as MAGA and 95% approval at least would be commonly seen. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the movement, and of course mind reading is fraught with errors. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts, Jared? Well, if you were to poll enough MAGA people to also include MAGA elites, then you certainly would not have 100%. That's true. That's what I've been talking about in media for the last month. There's a big difference between MAGA voters and the MAGA elite. That is true. And if you look at really the diehards for Trump, he remains 80 at the lowest 80 to 90% approval. But if you look at his broader coalition who voted him into office in November 2024, then his approval rating goes way down. I was going to say, strength in numbers, I did a piece on this, about 27% they said of non-MAGA Republicans now hold a somewhat or very unfavorable view of Trump. So I mean, that's not a massive number, but it's more than zero. That is pretty high. Amongst self-described Republicans, Gallup stopped doing this in December 2025. So they stopped doing this last year. But by memory, I believe some of the lowest numbers they got were in the 70s, high 70s for Republican approval of Donald Trump.
So, yeah. We should also say the 100% poll, obviously an outlier. Most MAGA polls are in the, like you say, Mike, in the mid-90s, usually the MAGA Republicans, self-identified MAGA Republicans. But to me, I don't care about the percentage of MAGA Republicans who support Trump for exactly the point you just made, Mike. They are self-selecting. What I care about is the percentage of Republicans who call themselves MAGA Republicans. That's the interesting number.
Yeah.
And I would note that according to that CNN poll, the MAGA base has grown since 2024. It went from 28% in 2024 to 30% now. So that is, I think, worth noting, I would say.
Also potentially a sampling error.
Yes. No, I know. Well, I mean, the fact that we already think that that's an outlier, that poll, means we shouldn't hang our hat on it. But anyway, so that's what I wanted to add about the Republicans, if you wanted to ask about that. Let's go into, as far as independent voters go, by the way, he's doing even worse.
If there's one big number from this, is that Donald Trump now has the worst net approval rating among independents of any president ever at this point in term 2. He is worse than Richard Nixon, who would be going adios amigos in a few months back in 1974 in term 2. Look at this, minus 45 points, worse than George W. Bush at this point in term 2. The Iraq War was weighing him down at minus 37, and worse than Richard Nixon when, of course, there were all those impeachment hearings back in 1974 at minus 36 points. He's nearly 10 points worse among independents on his net approval rating at this point in term 2, Donald Trump is, than Richard Nixon. My goodness gracious.
Now, I could have told you that stat. It would have taken 1 second. But I like seeing Harry Anton say the year 1974. So I want to play that to you. Independence, he's doing very badly.
I will say, I don't know him personally, but I've been on calls with him, and he talks like that every day.
Goodness gracious.
How he is. And you don't hear that many people on CNN of that age demographic who have accents like that. And he's got a great New York accent.
Yes, he does. The reason for this poor approval, there's no mystery there. Economic approval, according to Reuters, Trump's economic approval is now at 29%, which, if we look at that graph there, is now below Biden's at any point in time in Biden's administration. That might be an outlier because there's a big drop-off, but I'm not sure it's an outlier by much because CNN, they have 31% economic approval, so that's not much more, and they have 69% disapproval. On inflation, CNN have 27% approval and 72% disapproval on inflation, compared to 68% disapproval for Biden and 66% disapproval for Carter, Jimmy Carter, on inflation. It was like double digits, wasn't it?
Yeah. So to maybe put this into context, UMass Amherst has a poll they conducted in March of just last month, and 37% of Americans, they rated the economy as poor. Any guesses for what it was in October 2024 when Biden was in office?
I would be guessing that it would be 31%.
19.
Oh, wow.
19. So it's basically doubled. That poll conducted by former U.S. State Senator visiting fellow Ray LaRaja. And it's a fantastic poll. I love when people have longevity in their polls.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, my God, that is a great number. Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that
Twice as worse.
Yeah, I'm surprised. That's big stuff. On gas prices, Trump's disapproval is at 76%. Biden's worst, when it was $5 a gallon, was 72%. Interestingly, in that same CNN poll, by the way, the share of Republicans who strongly approve of Trump's job performance, Republicans who strongly approve of his job performance, has dropped to 43% from 52% in January. So that's another answer to your question.
Yep.
It's a big drop-off in 2 months. Might be war-related. Approval on the war. YouGov has got an interesting graph here. Look at this erosion of the support in the war. 28% support for the war, 59% disapproval. You can see it's really dropped off in the last week. There wasn't much movement for most of this month, and then just in the last week, there's just the bomb's fallen out.
I've been making this point again regularly. There has been no war in modern American history that a U.S. president has launched with a majority being against it or a majority not being in favor of it. This is the first. In addition to the fact that he did not consult allies and partners, he did not go to the UN, he did not go to Congress, he didn't go to the American people until more than a month into it to give a speech that he could have given a month prior.
Yeah.
And so to have this sort of this sort of negative sentiment for a U.S. war is unprecedented in modern American history. And I know we use that term all the time with Trump. It's unprecedented the way that he's done this or that. But this is outside of Trump. Just no American president has ever launched a war with this level of disapproval.
To put numbers on this, by the way, for those who can't see it because they're listening, last week, the net disapproval of the war was 19 points. It was minus 19 approval. Now, the net approval is minus 31. It's dropped 12 points approval in a week.
And again, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all of these had a majority of Americans in support of them. Some of them as high as 75% or more when they started.
I have an interesting stat on that right now, which is Republicans, the amount they back the war. Now, a lot of people have noted that the Republicans are backing the war in large numbers still. That's true. But interestingly, not so much strong approval. What I'm showing you here, Jared, and I will describe it to the listeners, is I'm showing you the top half of the graph has a number of polls showing strong approval versus somewhat approval amongst Republicans for the war. The bottom half of the graph are the same numbers for different periods of the Iraq War. For those listening, you're looking at between 33% and 42% strong approval for the war amongst Republicans at the moment, compared to 29 to 35% somewhat approval amongst Republicans.
And just to clarify, that's across, it looks like 3 different polls, right? YouGov, Pew, and Fox.
That's right. That's right. But the Iraq half, after a month of Iraq, they had 84% strong approval amongst Republicans. That's more than both strong and somewhat combined at the moment for Republicans.
And that's in April 2003.
That's right. That's after a month. Even a year in, they had 65% strong approval amongst Republicans and 18% somewhat approval. Even in 2005, when the war was on the nose and we saw what George W. Bush's polling was like at that point in time before, not good, the Iraq War still had 50% strong approval amongst Republicans, which is much better than any poll now. So that's when it was on the nose. It was still doing better. So that just goes to your point, because Iraq doesn't go down history as a very popular war at the end of its period. And a few more numbers from CNN. 1/3 of Americans think Trump has a clear plan for Iran. 1/3. 29% say the war has been worth the toll. 59% said that about Iraq in 2003. And there's been, also I might add, much less toll in this war as well than in Iraq. And my final stuff for you here, Jared, is midterms related stuff. Both CNN and YouGov have Dems ahead by 6 points on the generic vote. That's just, you don't care about the particular candidate. Would you vote for a Democrat in the House or a Republican? 6 points ahead, Democrats. The 50+1 average, got a graph on that. It's at a 5-point margin average at the moment to the Democrats, which, just to be clear, that would be a smashing if that's how it panned out. Gallup has the Dems ahead by 10 points, which is a 14-point turnaround since fourth quarter in 2024. And here's some interesting numbers about the midterms. CNN found amongst double haters, and I think double haters are a key group.
Beat me to it.
Oh, you're going to do this one?
No, please.
Sorry, okay.
I love the double haters.
Yeah, I know. Well, they're really important in this period of polarization, because you know that the single haters, they'll be there and they will hate each side equally. The double haters will determine the election. And the double haters are, amongst them, Democrats win by 31 points, according to CNN. So that's a huge number. That's a very big number. Also, according to CNN, Democratic-aligned voters are 17 points more likely than Republicans to call themselves extremely motivated to vote in 2026. Enthusiasm matters because turnout is based on enthusiasm. And that's even though they're 14 points less likely to view their own party favourably. Democrats are 14 points less likely to say we like Democrats, but they're still 17 points more likely to vote.
What's the Joe Biden quote? Don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the other guy.
Yeah.
And they hate the other guy.
They really do. They're very powerful single haters. And that on that area, Democrats hating Democrats, that's also quite interesting because we've talked for ages about this, about how approval of Democrats this year has been abominable because Democratic voters themselves do not approve of Democrats. And so overall, then approval numbers are terrible. I've always said it doesn't matter because they're going to vote Democratic anyway because of what you just said. But that's starting to change, I guess, as Trump increasingly becomes on the nose. According to YouGov, in January, Democrats only gave their members of Congress plus 30 points approval. That's approval minus disapproval. Now they're giving them plus 55 approval. So that's quite a move. And that, by the way, is entirely because of very liberal Democrats. The moderate Democrats, the just purely liberal Democrats, but not very liberal, those guys support Democrats at the same levels as they did before. But the very liberal Democrats have moved from minus 13 net approval in January of Democrats to plus 28 net approval of Democrats. Once again, sample size might be a factor here because this is now a small group.
Okay.
As a result of that, Democratic House members now have a minus 21 net approval, which is 5 points more than the House Republicans who have a minus 26 net approval. And all year we've seen the House Republicans miles ahead, but that's now changed just because the very liberal Democrats got on board. So that's starting to reflect the generic ballot a bit more now. That's all I've got to offer. What you got to add, Jared?
Well, I thought we were talking about AI before,
Yeah.
so we should highlight the fact that AI, I just discovered, is now doing its own polling. And by polling, I mean they're polling themselves.
So they're just making shit up.
So Axios came out with a story a few days ago where they referenced, the quote is, new findings by Eru, an AI simulation research firm, for Heartland Forward show that a majority of people trust their own doctors and nurses. But what Axios had to add in a editor's comment is that was not a poll. Those findings are not a poll of people. That was a poll in what they call silicon sampling.
Silicon sampling.
Basically, they have language models that simulate human samples. And the fact that Axios reported on this is a bit worrying. Not to bag out Axios, I loved them when Jonathan Swan was there.
Yeah.
Barack Ravid has had a great breaking news from there as well. But the fact that we are there, where we're now sampling language models, is pretty worrying, especially because the New York Times, I should note, I can add this as well to the show notes. New York Times has an op-ed piece on this that is really scathing. And just to give you an idea of how out of touch these language models are, it ran the same Eru system, ran a full simulation of the 2024 presidential election on the eve of Election Day. And guess who won?
I'm guessing Kamala Harris.
Narrowly won. So, yeah, maybe we shouldn't use language models for sampling. And maybe we shouldn't write news stories about those samples. So, yeah, I first want to share that and how scary it is that not only that we are considering this, but that journalists have decided to reference them.
There have been some very disappointing choices made by media outlets in polling recently. That is one. I'll give you another one.
Let's hear it.
The fact that a bunch of news outlets have done deals with prediction market companies and are treating them like polls.
You saw it right there on CNN. They showed the Kashi ticker at the bottom.
Yeah, like for those who aren't following closely, it looks like a poll.
Yep.
It's not a poll. It's bullshit. It's like your synthetic poll. It's just made up crap. And they're treating it like it's an important statistic. The chances of Trump being re-elected or whatever of the Democrats winning 2028 according to Kalshi are this. That's garbage. The chances. So I'm not liking that. And they're obviously not doing it because they think it's good content. They're doing it because they've been paid to do it.
Yeah.
It's advertising. It's got no value whatsoever. So anyway, I'm not happy
Except
with that.
insights of insider trading or potential insider trading cases.
That's true. I'll pay attention when they start saying things like, this is what Polymarket has to say about where there's going to be a bombing tomorrow. Then I'll pay attention, but not because of the predictive value of the market, but because of the insider trading of the market.
Or we just have a ticker of pizza deliveries between midnight and 3 a.m. and near the Pentagon.
Same diff. Anyway, go on.
You handled all the major polling that I wanted to cover, including the double haters. But one thing that I wanted to highlight, and this is just because I'm a polling nerd, is just how much people love to align themselves with identities. So YouGov did this really interesting poll, basically asking people how they viewed themselves when it came to having U.S. military force used frequently to promote U.S. policy or not. So they had one question and they changed it with one tweak.
Yep.
So one version of the question is, would you describe yourself more as someone who believes that military force should be used frequently to promote U.S. policy, or more as someone who believes the U.S. should rarely or never use military force?
Okay.
Right? Now, pay attention. That's option A. Option B, and this was they did an experiment and they asked half the sample option A, and here's half the sample in option B. Would you describe yourself more as a hawk, someone who believes that military force should be used frequently to promote U.S. policy, or would you describe yourself as more of a dove, someone who believes the U.S. should rarely or never use military force? Notice two animals that were featured in option B.
Yes.
Hawk and dove. Now,
otherwise identical.
Yes. So just including that concept of a hawk and a dove. YouGov, this is a subsample of a subsample, but they had men and women, and they had men who see themselves as completely masculine, men who see themselves as mostly masculine, men who see and number 3, men who see themselves as slightly masculine or equally masculine and feminine. Now, there wasn't much of a difference between option A and B for men who see themselves as mostly masculine or men who see themselves as slightly masculine. But for the men who see themselves as completely masculine, the results were considerably different. So without the hawk and dove labels, so just people who have views, who want to see the U.S. use its military force more frequently to promote U.S. policy, it's 14% in favor and 38% against. All right?
Yeah.
Now, when you add the animals, you add hawk, that 14% goes to 35%, more than double. And the dove shrinks to half, from 38% to 19%.
Do we know what happened with the women, or was it just we just know the man?
Fascinating. Not really statistically significant.
So what you're saying is we've identified the number of men with Hegseth energy. Thank you, Leon.
And how you have to couch options with animals to get a change in the way they view things. But I know this seems cheap, but it really does change. Having done many polls myself, it really does change results. Slight changes in the language has huge differences. And so sometimes you'll see, like when you looked at those Iran polls and then the Iraq war, I imagine they're similar, but one variation very well could be that the language between them was a bit different, because all it takes is a slight variation and you can see a statistically significant difference.
Yeah, we totally should pay more attention to the wording in the polls. Like I do try and pull that up every now and then, but that you're absolutely right. It does make such a big difference. I can understand though why guys don't want to be associated with doves. What do doves do apart from crying? They do nothing.
Not a fan of Prince?
I'm very hawk. Well, with the exception of the AFL kind, but hawks are awesome.
Yeah. No, but again, this goes to as well the way that people phrase foreign policy in particular. They talk about being restrained or being passive or being aggressive. It's just like the way you use these terms is very interesting. Or the way that I'll poll sometimes on asking people if they want an independent Australian foreign policy. I don't define what that is. I let people decide what that is. And that's always interesting for what that is. Because I think independent means independent of both the United States and China, where some people think that, oh, no, that only means one or the other.
Okay, so as an actual pollster, do you look at these Trump numbers and think he can keep on going down, or do you think he's reached rock bottom? Because, because he's got that group of people who are always going to support him, doesn't he?
Yeah. As much as I've been saying that we've seen a fracturing of the MAGA elite, not the MAGA base, I do have to wonder how much there's a lag and how the MAGA elite will start to influence the MAGA base. And also, I will, beyond just MAGA, now that we're seeing more and more filing deadlines pass for primaries, for the midterms, and we're seeing basically, again, Trump, he has no power in the general. He only has power in the Republican primaries, right? So as those dates pass, as those primaries occur, we are seeing his power wane. And so I imagine that the not just MAGA, but Republicans more general are going to be moving further and further away from him. And so I think that as much as we've called him Teflon Don for a long time, we've looked at that rock solid Republican support. I think if I had to guess any time when it's going to decrease, it's going to start decreasing now.
The reason why I ask, that's really interesting. The reason why I ask is because I think that you would expect him to have, assuming the Democrats win the House at least, and there's just that potential they could potentially win the Senate, especially if they won the Senate. But even just the House, he's got some tough sledding ahead of him. He's got 2 years of investigations. They're not going to help his numbers. He's not going to get anything done. He's going to have all the things that have been covered up over the last 2 years. It's going to be a bit of a house of horrors for the next few years. And I think that his numbers at the end of 2028 are going to determine a lot about what the Republican Party looks like in 2029. And I'm hoping, as someone who's a bit nervous about the direction that the country has taken recently, I am hoping that the Republicans take a different tack going forward. And that's only going to happen if Trump's at 28 or 31 or something, not if he's at 40. If he's at 40 or 39 or something, this can continue on forever.
Yeah. I don't even think that I don't even look, to be honest, at that general number as much. I really look at that GOP approval rating because that has been so rock solid for even after January 6th. It did not go that far down. I think at one point the lowest I saw it was, I want to say 73 amongst Republican approval of Gallup looking at that. And then they sort of stopped polling on him because he wasn't president anymore. That is where I see his power more than anything else. We're just so polarized in the U.S. and we're so locked in. Everyone has a view of Donald Trump, whether you like him or not. It really is just how much is his base still supporting him. And I do actually have one, maybe not poll, but a chart that gives us an indication of where at least Senate Republicans think things are going. So they have the leading super PAC for Senate Republicans, the Senate Leadership Fund. They've just released their $350 million plan for controlling the Senate. And what's really interesting about this is that basically it's showing their ad buys. And they buy it now because it's cheaper than closer to the election. And you can see which states they bought ads in and how much they bought them in. And they bought...
Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
the big states? Okay, I am going to guess the biggest states are Texas, Ohio, and Maine.
Ohio, yes. Maine, yes. Not Texas.
Not Texas. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So by number alone, highest is Ohio, then North Carolina, then Maine, then Iowa, than Alaska.
See, I would have thought they would give up on North Carolina. I just don't think they have a chance there.
Then there are 3 Democratic-held states that they're going for. Michigan, Georgia, New Hampshire.
Should have said Georgia. Georgia.
Also,
Georgia.
The most obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that they're putting money in Michigan, that's really interesting. And that they're putting so much money into Iowa. They're putting $29 million into Iowa.
Yeah.
Iowa hasn't been a swing state since Obama.
Yeah.
08, not even 12.
I would have thought that's a pretty tough push.
Yeah. And
Michigan, North Carolina and Michigan, I wouldn't be bothering. Like Michigan, I know Michigan's a swing state, it's close, all the rest of it, but just the tariffs, they must be just poison in Michigan.
But also the fact that in North Carolina, they have a good Democratic candidate.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I thought they'd give up on. I mean, no one's beating Roy Cooper. I would have thought that would be. I mean, they're already running bathroom ads in North Carolina. That's the fact they're running bathroom ads. That's just last chance saloon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they've just got nothing on the guy. So it's when I say bathroom ads, I mean trans people using bathrooms. That's where Republicans go when they've got nothing. And they just got no strategy. Go, we don't know how we're gonna get this person. That's just throwing spaghetti against the wall. That one.
But also, Ohio as well. The Democrats have a really good candidate there, and I don't mean good as in I agree with them. I mean good as in they're effective politicians.
Yeah.
And they've won office before. They've in the instance of Ohio, they've literally won that seat before. And so I think Democrats have a really good shot of Ohio. And the fact that just 2 months ago, would you have ever thought that we'd be talking about a Democratic takeover of the Senate?
3 months ago, no. About 2 months ago is when I was starting to think, oh my God, things are really going south around here.
Oh, really?
Like around January, around the Minnesota and stuff. I was thinking, you're a pepper, you know this. I've been declaring loudly and proudly for about 9 months now that immigration was going to hurt him badly when it came to the midterms. When I started to actually see it biting, not just in October this year, but in January, I thought, my God, there's a long way to go down from here. But this whole year, I've been thinking, well, maybe it's not so obvious that the Republicans will hold the Senate. But yeah, if you asked me 5 months ago, I mean, I did say on PEP many times, they just got no chance in the Senate, the Democrats. But,
the reason I wouldn't say 2 months ago is I really thought that the ICE stuff was something that wasn't going to stay dog Trump until through September, October, November.
Well, it's gone away for now, but it'll be back. It will be back. There've been things I've been saving on immigration that I never have time to talk about. Always, immigration is the one that I never have time to talk about. But the detention center issue is going to hurt him coming August, September. I'll talk about that soon. I think that's coming back for sure.
And that's why Trump has basically become George W. Bush when it comes to invading a Middle Eastern country and now liking immigration.
Yeah.
And rolling back taxes and taking on a lot of debt to finance.
One of the things we were going to talk about later on, if we had time, was 2026-28. We've already begun, so why don't we just keep on going?
Let's do it.
Right. So there's a few things about the midterms and elections coming up that I'd like to discuss with you. The first of which is that this is something that's been creeping up on us for a while now. Since Trump's second inauguration, 30 state legislative seats have flipped in special elections. 30. When I say 30 have flipped, I mean 30 from Republicans to Democrats. Would you care to guess the number from Democrats to Republicans?
Starting from
under Trump.
I think there's like 3 or 4 in the beginning.
No, zero.
Zero?
Zero.
I thought Republicans won a couple special elections right after.
They won Republican seats.
They
haven't flipped any Democratic seats.
Well done. Yeah.
And a shutout like that, where one side gets some and the other side gets zero, that hasn't happened since Ballotpedia started tracking this stuff in 2010. So 16 years, that hasn't happened on any given year. This is the first time. So that's probably a sign things aren't going great for Republicans at the moment. When things aren't going great, the traditional sign of that is that you start getting a lot of retirements. And this is what I want to talk to you about, because I know you're across this as well. The number of congressional retirements. I'm going to show you a graph, which you've probably seen from New York Times. This is the number of retirements over time, the days on the bottom there are the days till the election. So as we're going across, getting closer to the election, you can see we're getting pretty close to the election now. And there are 61 retirements as of March 27th, 2026. This is the second most retirements. This graph is only in the recent times with all the years you're seeing there. But I can tell you for a fact, that's the second most since 1930. And the most is right there, 2018, just above. All right.
We should clarify what was 2018.
That was the midterms for Trump's first term. That's right. So to put the numbers on it, 61 retirements so far, 39 of them are Republicans. The record in 2018 was 62 retirees so far, and 44 of them were Republicans. And the breakdown of where they go as of like 2 weeks ago was 16 full retirements, 9 running for Senate seats, 10 running for governor, 1 running for attorney general in the state. Okay. So my question to you is, why? Is this telling us a landslide, or is this telling us other stuff?
I think it's both. I think it's telling us a landslide, and also I think Republicans and Democrats, but to a lesser extent, more so Republicans, don't like being in Congress.
Yeah.
They have to toe the line with Donald Trump, even though, we're coming on a decade since he went down the escalator. But it's been less than a decade since he completely taken on the entire Republican body and just gotten everyone to toe the line. And Republicans in 2018 and Republicans now, but also Republicans in 2023 did not and do not like Donald Trump. You have a few diehards. But I still say this to this day. If you get most Republicans in Congress and you get them in closed-door environments off the record, they do not like Donald Trump. If you get Democrats in closed-door environments off the record, they will speak glowingly of Barack Obama. There is a very big difference. These Republicans will speak glowingly of Ronald Reagan. They'll speak glowingly of John McCain. Of these sorts of very strong national security types, there's still a lot of Republicans. Now, how do I know this?
Yeah.
One, from personal experience, because it's literally my job to talk to members of Congress and go to D.C. and blah, blah, blah. But two, just look at the secret ballots in the Senate when they are electing their GOP leader. They never go for the MAGA guys. They always go for...
That's a good point.
They always go for the least of the MAGA types, right? John Thune is not the Senate Majority Leader because he's the Senate Majority Leader because, in my view, he seems moderate and he is someone who could navigate a Trump and non-Trump GOP.
Yeah.
They did not go with
Rick Scott. Yeah.
Rick Scott because he is not fun to deal with. He is not someone that can get things done. And why do people actually retire? Well, the stated reasons are political gridlock. I want to spend time with my family, change in personal life, or they say it's all political theater. But one thing that they will increasingly say, and this is something that is never attributed to anyone because they don't want to be labeled a coward, is that they literally worry for their family. Let's not forget what happened to Joni Ernst in Iowa when she wanted to not vote for Pete Hegseth. You remember this. She got death threats, and she basically said, make it stop.
Yeah, and Tom Tillis as well.
And what is Tom Tillis? How did he respond to all that?
He quit.
Yeah. And who has become the face of the opposition to Trump in the Senate?
It's Tom Tillis.
Yeah. So it really, they don't enjoy it. And they say as much. And so I think it is both that they're going to lose and that they don't enjoy it.
I think you're right. And I'll throw in a third reason as well. This is a reason why there'd be, actually I'll throw in two more reasons. Isn't it? I think it's not just they hate Trump. I think they hate Congress. I think Congress sucks. I think it really, really sucks at the moment. Yeah. And that's not just a Trumpy thing. I think it sucks everywhere. Yeah. The speaker is more powerful than ever. They only get more and more and more powerful. And the only person who's getting more powerful than the speaker is the president. And so the president seems to have endless power compared to Congress, and any powers left over goes to the Speaker. And chairs of committees, they're doing nothing. The there's no legislation, no proper legislation anymore. It's just message bills. You don't get the agency and the power and the ability to affect change. When people used to become politicians, it's because they wanted to change things.
Yeah.
There's no chance of changing things if you're a House member. Now, even if you're the second most powerful House member, you have zero chance of changing things in America at the moment. What's the point? The only thing you get an opportunity to do is raise money and turn up on soul-destroying cable news shows. That's it. And the only kind of person who would enjoy that, there are people who enjoy it. Matt Gaetz enjoys that. Like people who are show ponies, they enjoy that, not legislators who want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so what happens then is the majority doesn't have the ability to do old-fashioned legislation. The legislators just get out.
Yeah.
And who are they replaced by? Show ponies. When there's a higher proportion of show ponies, they do even less. And then the legislators that are left get out. And they're replaced by people with even more show ponies. And it's just this ongoing cycle of just Congress just getting worse and worse and worse. So I think there's that as well. And fourthly, this is the reason why Republicans will always have more retirees than Democrats, unless Democrats are really on the nose in one particular election and they're all heading for the exits. Republicans will always have just a few more retirees because they limit the number of years that you can be the chair of a committee. Even though the chair of a committee does nothing, they at least get paid more, and they can at least it looks nice on their resume, and it's slightly
They control the hearings.
I suppose, but I mean,
depends on
the hearings.
It depends on the committee and if it's fully televised or not.
That's true. That is true.
Remember, let's not forget how Rand Paul used his chairmanship.
That is right. That is true. He did have some fun. Just to prosecute his vendettas. But the point is, you get 6 years as a House committee chair if you're a Republican, and then you're finished. And a lot of those retirees, not a lot, a number of those retirees are House chairs who are at the end of their period. Yeah. There was one just the other day, Sam Graves. You probably haven't heard of him because committee chairs do nothing. The House Committee on Transportation, he just retired. The House Committee Chair of Transportation, he just retired because he was going to step down as chair. He was forced to. So, yeah. So there's that as well, I think.
I think the chairing the committees it's not just a bit of a pay rise. It actually, you do command some power and you do decide some things. But you're right. It's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah. Look, I'm being a bit flippant, but I mean, for those who don't know, 30 or 40 years ago, those guys were possibly more important than the Speaker. They were really, really important.
Yeah.
They mattered, and now not so much. Let's just run through a few states, stuff that's happening. There's some interesting stuff I've just been storing for months. Nebraska. I've been wanting to talk about this forever. I'll make this really quick. You probably won't even know about this, or maybe you will. I don't know. Have you heard about what's happening in Nebraska primaries?
No.
Okay, it's interesting. This is not getting much publicity, but it's fun.
Is this the one member of Congress that's been fighting Trump in Nebraska? I can't remember. Don Bacon.
No, this is not about that.
Okay.
This is a Senate primary.
Okay.
Nebraska is where, if you recall, back in 2024, Navy veteran, union leader, independent candidate Dan Osborne, he lost to Deb Fischer by 7 points in 2024, which is a lot less than you expect in Nebraska, right? Now, the Democrat brand name is so toxic in Nebraska that there's no point. Dan Osborne is a popular independent. They get him to run, and they don't even run against him. They don't want to siphon any votes off him. They think that's their best chance to not have a Republican as a senator. And I think he never says he'll caucus with the Democrats, but they all assume he will caucus with the Democrats if he wins, right? So they leave the Democrat line blank so it doesn't take votes away from Dan Osborne. Okay, now that's what they did again. In the Democratic primary, no one running, except for at the last second, someone ran. A guy called William Forbes. Now, Forbes has no chance, obviously, but he could siphon votes away from Osborne if he wins the primary. It's an easy primary to win when you're the only candidate. Right. And the plot thickens, Jared, because Forbes is a very unusual Democrat. He says he's a lifelong Democrat, but he's the kind of lifelong Democrat who voted for Trump multiple times and can't name a single Democrat that he's ever voted for in his life. He's also the kind of lifelong Democrat who went to a Republican conference this year. He was caught there, and then when he was asked about that, he said, "I'm trying to get information from everybody. I think for myself. I'm a free thinker." He's also the kind of lifelong Democrat who deleted a Facebook page with sermons that he read out, criticising Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, cultural Marxism, there's a signifier there, and another sermon where he referred to Dementia Joe, and another where he thanked Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem for restricting abortion rights. He's that kind of lifelong Democrat. You're a little suspicious of Forbes?
Maybe slightly.
Look, the truth is, this Senate race is a huge uphill battle anyway for Osborne. No one's talking about Nebraska as a pickup, are they? But yeah, so it'd be tough for him to win that anyway. But the Democrats, they want to give him at least some chance. And so they got an opponent in at the very, very, very last second against Forbes. It's a woman named Cindy Burbank, and she says openly, if she beats Forbes, she's immediately dropping out of the general and letting Osborne run without any competition. So she's there as a stalking horse of Democrats to get rid of someone who they are sure is not a Democrat, and it's a dirty tricks campaign to try and make sure Dan Osborne doesn't win. That primary's on May the 12th, so it's a month away.
It's like the Kanye West nomination, except even more incompetent.
That's right.
You should really read about that entire nomination and like the lawyers involved and like getting last minute petitions in. It was just as wild as you'd expect from the artist now known as Ye. I don't know.
I got no idea.
One thing to highlight.
Yeah.
Nebraska had a Democratic senator as late as 2013.
I know.
So it's not that far removed.
Dude, North Dakota had a Democratic senator as late as 2013.
Beyond that, right?
Maybe 2014, yeah. Yes. Let's change in the last 15
feels like half
years.
a century, but
Indiana had a Democratic senator really recently. Anyway, Kentucky, over in Thomas Massey's seat in Kentucky. We talk about Thomas Massey. He's the last House member who's doing what House members are meant to do, which is actually making decisions on things on their own merit rather than just being a cog in the machine.
I love your libertarian love for Thomas Massey.
That's right.
It's so obvious.
I mean, obviously, I agree with a lot of what he says as well. But I mean, even aside the fact that I agree with him, I like the fact he's an independent. And yes, it is very libertarian for me to say that. But we saw Trump campaigning against him recently in his seat. And Massey confidently said, "I've got my own relationship with the voters. It's all good. Trump's wasting his time. Good luck, mate." Well, it seems he isn't so confident. If you look at his ads. Have you seen his ads?
No, I haven't.
They basically make out like he's a Trump fanboy, and that tells you all you need to know. Let's have a look at a Thomas Massey ad.
I'm Thomas Massey, and I approve this message.
Woke Eddie Gowrine abandoned President Trump's Republican Party, a complete dereliction of his MAGA duty. Woke Eddie left the Republican Party right after President Trump won the Republican nomination. Just check his voter registration. Guess when he finally changed his registration back to the Republican Party? That's right, only after President Trump was no longer in office and Joe Biden had become president. Woke Eddie Gowrine, not just a Trump hater, a Trump traitor.
Woke Eddie, his opposition, is just not a supporter of Trump like he is. And for those who are listening rather than seeing, the first shot was of Trump and Thomas Massey doing a big thumbs up together, showing the Massey. Now, his super PAC has followed up with this as well. Same message about Woke Eddie not being enough of a Trump supporter like Thomas Massey is. It's a little bit repetitive audibly for the listeners. There's some of the same phrases, but the visuals are very funny AI. So I'm going to play this as well for people who are watching.
These Trump traitors, they can't stand our president and can't help but let it show. Like Woke Eddie Gowrine. Woke Eddie left the Republican Party after Trump won the GOP nomination in 2016. Take a look for yourself. And when did Woke Eddie change his registration back to the GOP? After Joe Biden was sworn in, Trump was in the foxhole, and Woke Eddie Gowrine tucked his tail and ran. Kentucky Fourth Pack is responsible for the content of this ad.
That's my favourite kind of AI, where no one could possibly believe it's real, where Trump is in a World War I foxhole shooting at the Germans, and Woke Eddie is running away from him, deserting him.
Did you ever cover the way that the candidates can't actually coordinate with their PACs? And so the candidates would deliberately have hours of footage on YouTube?
Yeah, like Mitch McConnell with his marijuana.
I didn't see that one. I was thinking about Ted Cruz with random people and the most awkward interactions ever that made him look less likable.
Yes, yeah. No, yeah, Mitch McConnell put lots of B-roll footage online of him just walking through fields of hemp. and the super PACs were using that. It was very funny.
I do have to wonder, now that there's all this news coming out, I don't know if you're going to cover this later, about the Democrats now doing all these super PACs and stuff. And it reminds me of when the Black Panthers in California started, standing in public places with their arms, and then Governor Ronald Reagan all of a sudden became a very strong proponent of gun control.
That's right.
And
yes.
I just have to wonder, like, with the very partisan aspects of a couple members in particular of the Supreme Court, where they stand on Citizens United, if and when it becomes increasingly clear that the Democrats are maybe even outdoing the Republicans on super PACs.
That will be an interesting development, but that's probably not going to be during this election cycle because Trump's doing pretty well with the super PACs at the moment.
True.
I don't know if Thomas Massey's going to win the primary, but that ad strategy, what you just saw there, he's not talking about how he's a fearless independent who's the true MAGA guy who Trump betrayed, and he's not talking about I'm the real conservative. He's not doing any of that shit. He's just doing the other guy doesn't love Trump as much as I do. That makes me think his polling must be pretty bad.
Yeah, there's no other way around it.
Yeah.
It's not looking great. And he had, I think his national profile has only increased every year, right? And he's been defined as for his antagonism towards Trump. And Trump has only gotten increasingly angry with him. So it's only a matter of time before. But again, if there's any election where he might eke it out, it's this one, given everything we were just covering before.
You mentioned California. There was a potential disaster shaping up for the Democrats in the governor's race in California. You probably across this one. Do you want to explain jungle primaries quickly to the listeners, or do you want me
after you?
Sure, okay. It is explainable. They're very, very different to what things that happen in Australia. Jungle primaries are basically the idea of you get everyone all together in the same primary from both parties. There's no restriction. Everyone can run. You can have 200 people running in a jungle primary, and then they take the top two to run against each other. That's the idea. And so what that means is, in a state like California, you often get two Democrats running against each other in the general election after the jungle primary. But if you think about this for 1 second, like the California should have thought of this before they instituted this stupid system. It means if you got one side that have a lot fewer candidates than the other side, they split the vote a lot less. So if you have a situation where, say, the Republican Party in California right now, even though 70% of California are Democrats, there's only two candidates running for the Republicans versus the rest of the field who are all Democrats. Depending on how the vote splits, you could easily have two Republicans running against each other in the general, even though they only win 30% of the vote between themselves because all the Democrats split the vote even further. So, for example, let's have a look at the latest California polling averages. Steve Hilton, Republican, 16%. Chad Bianco, Republican. We interviewed him on Planet America once, 14%. Eric Swalwell, Democrat, 13%. Katie Porter, Democrat, 11%. Tom Steyer, Democrat, 10%. Xavier Becerra, Democrat, 4%. Antonio Villaraigosa, 3% Democrat. Betty Yee, Democrat, 3%. And it goes on. The Republicans hold the top 2 positions. This has happened a lot in polls this year. The Republicans have almost always held the top 2 positions, with Swalwell, Porter, Steyer splitting the vote amongst themselves, and then a whole bunch of dregs just behind. Obviously, what needs to happen is some Democrats have to drop out for the team. The problem is, you can tell someone who's on 0.5% to drop out, but that makes no difference.
Yeah.
You want ideally you want one of the 4%ers or 3%ers to drop out, because that could actually make a difference. I mean, in the ideal world, one of the 10%ers would drop out, but that's never going to happen because they've all got a shot, right? Antonio Villaraigosa has no chance at 3%, okay? California knows who he is. They're not voting for him. So he might as well just drop out, but he's not going to. He's not at the moment.
Just a quick fact check.
Yeah.
Registered voters in California, 46% are Democrats.
Is that how many Republicans are?
So the share who are Republicans in California, 25.2%.
Right. And then the rest independents, yeah.
Yeah. And so the Republicans increased and Democrats has decreased since 2021. So not 60, but 45.3% registered Democrats.
But how many independents are leaning towards the Democrats?
The Democrats usually get about 60%.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, fair enough, though. It's good to get the exact numbers. Okay, so you've got this situation where the people who can convince to drop out can't make any difference, and the people who could make a difference are not going to drop out because they're hoping that someone else drops out from about the same, and that will give them the momentum to get up into that next tier. It's especially a problem because if you think of those names I just read out, the Democrats, Swalwell, Porter, and Steyer are the top 3. The next 3 are Becerra, Villaraigosa, and Yee. Are you seeing a pattern here? White people, top 3. Non-white people, next 3. Try and convince the non-white person in California to drop out when there's 3 white people at the top. There's a lot of shameless race huckstering going on at the moment. People going, "Oh yeah, you don't like Latinos, hey? You try to ask me to drop out because I'm Latino, is that why? Oh, because I'm Asian, is that why?" No, it's because you're on 4%. But it works. In the Democratic Party, that works. And so they're just not dropping out. They're in trouble until yesterday. Do you know what happened yesterday?
No.
Strangely, Trump came to the rescue like an idiot.
I saw this.
And he endorsed Steve Hilton.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? What
Can't
an
help
idiot. It's just, and that's almost certainly going to kill Chad Bianco's campaign now. He'll at least lose 5 or 6 points and get below that critical 10-point margin so that the other Democrats can get past. So the Democrats don't need to drop out anymore. They'll be fine. That primary is on June 3. So it's probably going to end up being Hilton versus one of the Dems, I would guess.
Swalwell?
Don't know. He's ahead in the polls at the moment, but yeah, Katie Porter, I think, would have pissed it in if it hadn't been for that viral video. That really hurt her.
Her staffers?
Yeah, that really hurt her. But Steyer's got all the money, and he's running all the ads, so he might come through at the end. He started a lot less than 10%, so he might in 2 months' time he might be in front. Over to Maine, in the Democrat Senate race there, Graham Plattner's kicking away from Governor Janet Mills. Recall Plattner, he's the Sanders-style populist. Mills, she's very liberal, to be honest, but she's 78 years old, older than Susan Collins, the person she's trying to replace, and they can easily paint her as the establishment because she's a governor. And, even though, as I said, she's actually quite liberal.
Yeah.
Like he might be in trouble last year when some of his old Reddit posts emerged, and also the fact he once had a Nazi cross tattooed on his chest, which he said he had no idea what it was, and then he had it covered up when it came out, even though a lot of people accused him of knowing beforehand and not covering it up. Anyway, since then, he's obviously proven himself to Maine voters because he is absolutely lapping Janet Mills. He's now ahead in the RCP polling average by 19 points, 52 to 33. And now Mills is going for the throat. on those Reddit posts. It's desperate times for meals. So she's running ads like this.
Did you know Graham Plattner wrote that women worried about rape need to, quote,
not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to.
It's disgusting.
Plattner wrote to avoid rape, women should, quote,
act like an adult for sake.
Graham Plattner, seriously. We blame the victim. That's a horrible thing to say. Disqualifying. I have not seen this. He's a bully. This guy gives off a vibe. Just no way I could vote for you. No.
Graham Plattner, the closer you look, the worse it gets.
This guy gives off a vibe.
I will note that in a lot of ads, especially political ads in the U.S., you're used to seeing a lot of diversity. And what you saw there for the listeners was, I think, 4 different white women.
White, middle-aged women.
Maine is one of the least diverse states racially in America. So that is probably why you saw so many white women and not a single non-white woman there.
That's a good point.
Like, ads in America, not just political, but just like car insurance ads, famously have more interracial marriages than you're ever used to seeing than you're used to seeing in real life. Yeah. So it is, to me, as someone who's lived in New York and Chicago, that I'm used to seeing more non-white people, but that was a lot of white women. Yeah,
I'm guessing that the Georgian version of that ad would look very different. But, also, like I said, old as well. White and old, that's Maine. But,
I know you've done a whole bunch on Plattner, but I want to highlight one quick thing on him, if that's all right. And I think it's similar to Beto O'Rourke, who almost took Texas, got the closest we've ever seen.
Points, close.
And similar to Mamdani, do you know one thing that unites all of them?
No.
They were seen as Democratic, future hopes, the future of the Democratic Party, but I think beyond just beyond national implications, I really think that 2 things. One, they were effective campaigners and communicators, but also tireless campaigners. They went out of their way to visit basically every single place they could. In this era, we were just talking about Reddit, right? Online, this and that. Plattner, Beto O'Rourke, and Mamdani tirelessly visited every single place they could. They never let up. And you can only, again, age plays a factor. You can only do so much when you're 78. And Plattner has done every single town hall you can imagine, has really connected with voters. And for those who haven't seen, it's different in the U.S. I think David Smith has talked extensively about this, the difference between an American politician versus an Australian politician. American politicians have a lot of charisma. And are known for giving great speeches. They're not as good at working with colleagues to get things done like they are in the parliamentary system. But that is something that you can see when you go to these small town halls. You'll go to the middle of nowhere, Maine, and there will be 50 people, and Plattner will talk to everyone and make them feel special. And I've seen this myself, and to see Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. To see these politicians do that is really amazing. To see that charisma in person is quite a sight.
He's clearly got a lot of charisma. I got to say, though, that the ad that actually made the greatest impact on me that I've seen from main candidates actually came from Plattner, and it was a positive ad about himself, and it really turned me off him.
Oh, interesting.
I'll show you the ad, and then I'll tell you what I was talking about.
I was born in Blue Hill back when it was still possible to be born there. So long as Big Pharma calls the shots, hospitals will keep closing. In the Senate, I'll fight for you. I'm Graham Plattner, and I approve this message because we should shut down Big Pharma, not our hospitals. Okay, so that shows the kind of charisma you're talking about. He's very natural in front of the camera, very likable, like he seems very warm, all the rest of it. You know, he's a good performer, totally. That ad was also incredibly vacuous and ignorant. And it's like, to me, I look at that and I go, that's left-wing MAGA right there. Like, that's what that is. In a saying Big Pharma is shutting down hospitals, it makes no sense whatsoever. You might as well blame racism. Like, it's just good. One has nothing to do with the other. Rural hospitals are being shut down because, well, for a start, it's very complicated. But
It's because of declining rural populations. It's because of rising rural poverty. And so they don't have as much health insurance, more than rely on Medicaid. And there's rising fixed costs in the health industry generally. On top of that, there's loads of red tape. The reimbursement rates are way too low, both from the private sector and especially from the government. For Medicaid and Medicare Advantage, the privatisation of Medicare, the really low reimbursement rates there as well. It's putting huge pressure on hospitals for their bottom line. And with the rural areas dying, they just can't balance the books anymore. It has nothing to do with Big Pharma in any way, shape or form. And look, there were, not just me, there were some Mills supporters who saw that ad and they were going, oh, here's another Fetterman who's just going to talk a bit of populist slop and then just turn into a Republican when they become a senator. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. He may well be a true believer in the left and all the rest of it. That's fine. What I do think, though, was it'd be nice if the Senate didn't get dumber. That's what I think. And I think Susan Collins, for all her flaws, and I don't think anyone who's watching this podcast is probably a huge Susan Collins fan, but for all her flaws, at least she understands the way policy works. She does. She's a genuinely intelligent politician who is always balancing and calibrating, and she understands the ins and outs of the Senate. Plattner clearly doesn't have a clue, or at least he's pretending he doesn't have a clue. One of the two. Look, it's democracy. You get the charismatic dumb guy sometimes. But just speaking for myself, I saw that and went, oh God, no, I don't want more of that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, at this point, we've been in this populist moment for a long time in America. It's gotten to the point now where if I feel like someone's trying to appeal to my emotions, I immediately am averse to it, and I just want boring. I am a think tanker, literally like an analyst, so maybe it's just playing to type. But we've had so much of the like stick it to this, stick it to that, and I want the emotion. I realize a technocratic democracy is not great. It's not sustainable. But just, again, like I think we talked about the last time I was on, a Jerry Ford type guy who falls down the stairs is played college football and didn't even expect to become president. Something a bit tamer. I wouldn't mind.
Of course, I understand that people are just voting for who they want the majority to be, and I understand all this stuff. I'm just sick of dumb politicians. One more thing. Now, just in case I haven't alienated enough of our audience, I'm sure I've just generated a bit of correspondence there. One more, which will probably piss them off as well, is some wannabe 2028 Democrat candidates are starting to put out policies. Cory Booker and Chris Van Hollen have both put out tax cut packages. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Under Van Hollen's policy, individuals who earn less than $46,000 and married couples who earn less than $92,000 pay zero federal income tax. They still pay payroll taxes, but federal income tax zero. Under Booker's policy, people get a standard tax deduction of up to $75,000 per couple. So that's a lot more income before you run out of tax deduction of $75,000, right? In terms of cost of these policies, Van Hollen's is going to cost $1.5 trillion over 10 years. Booker's will cost $5.5 trillion over 10 years in terms of less federal revenue. Now, this drives me crazy, Jared, as a policy guy. I should play. We're talking policy, aren't we? What time is it? Sorry, Lucky, went a bit loud there. It's policy time, Lucky, wake up. If you want to run a government, Jared, you need money. I'm sorry, you need money. You need to raise it from somewhere, okay? It can't just be from the top 1%. They're not the only ones out there. America, believe it or not, already has a super progressive tax system. Even compared to Europe, it has a progressive tax system. Have a look at the tax breakdown here. The left column shows you how income breaks down for various income groups as far as gross income goes, the right tells you the amount they're paying in taxes, in federal income taxes. The bottom 50% of Americans earn 11% of the total adjusted gross income. Yes, that's a lot of inequality. I agree. But they pay 3% of the total income taxes. The top 1% earn 22% of the total adjusted gross income, and they pay 40% of the total income taxes. I'm not crying for the super rich here, Jared. They can pay more. And I'm about to list a whole bunch of taxes they can pay. All right? I'm not saying you don't charge the rich more. Yes, you charge the rich more, but you charge everyone more because they're running $2 trillion deficits at the moment, and it's going to get worse. They need a lot of money. And if you look at Europe, they tax everyone more. They've got VATs. They tax lower income people way more than America taxes lower income people. If you taxed the top 1%, 100% of their income, Jared, you wouldn't raise more than about $1 trillion extra a year. They are running $2 trillion deficits now. Before we add the subsidised childcare, the universal pre-K, the Medicare for all, the free uni tuition fees, and all the rest that they're going to promise in this next election campaign, the Democrats I'm talking about. We're talking well over another $1 trillion in costs there. Right? You just got to balance the books somehow, and you need more taxes. They need GSTs. They need land taxes. They need stock trading taxes. They need inheritance taxes. A lot of those taxes I just listed are only going to affect the rich. That's fine. You can up their income tax as well. I don't care, but they just need more taxes. The last thing it is a $5.5 trillion tax cut. By the way, who do you think is going to get that tax cut from Cory Booker? People who pay $75,000 in tax. You know who they are? The rich. Just the not super rich. Right, so you're talking about the upper middle class now. Again, tax cuts from these guys. It's just unsustainable. And I get you can't run for an election and say, oh, we're going to raise all your taxes. But can we please not make it worse? What do you think?
I mean, who is the Democratic base now more than anyone else?
The rich. That's true.
And not just the rich, the upper middle class, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I think the story that was going viral about this was the NBC News, and the headline of it was, "Tax cuts are the hot new idea for Democrats."
They never thought of that before.
But then the subhead is, "New tax cut plans from 2028 presidential prospects and major Democratic candidates for governor have spurred a, quote, wonk revolt from liberal and moderate policy experts."
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you for that revolt.
I was revolting indeed. Yeah, and never mind the fact, sorry, I'm interrupting you just a bit there. I'll just make one more point. Social Security and Medicare are both they're on the verge of requiring subsidisation from the register of the budget. They call that going bankrupt. It's not going bankrupt, but it's a problem. And that is going to be huge when that approaches. So I predict, like I've predicted many times, this next administration, no matter what you promise, is going to be about the debt. It's just going to be about it. It just has to be. It's just getting too big. Like it's the interest payments alone are $1 trillion.
I think I saw a stat where something like half of millennials, which I am, don't think they'll get any Social Security.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why the white collar jobs do. It's not exactly the same, but similar to Australia's superannuation, something called 401k.
Yeah.
Because there is such a widespread belief that Social Security is just something that our parents and grandparents got, but we won't.
I notice, I mean, you're saying very intelligent things, but I notice that you're not weighing in on your views about this. Do you want to share a piece of the correspondence, Jared?
No, I think that debt is going to be something that the U.S. is going to have to face one way or another. I mean, not to force a segue to the next segment, but on Iran, I just look at how much the Trump administration has highlighted this really Hollywood-like rescue mission of these downed pilots. And no one's talking about not just the cost of that, but the cost of everything.
Yeah.
So the cost of that of that exercise is truly unbelievable when you actually looked at what was entailed in the entire process, which included 150, according to Trump, 155 aircraft, 4 bombers, 64 flights, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescued aircraft. Reportedly, some government officials have said this, not even talking man hours, but just the equipment, I think, for the most part, $300 million to get 2 U.S. servicemen. I just don't think that the U.S. will have the leeway to engage in such activities and such exercises without thinking about the budget constraints moving forward. And what do those budget constraints look like? That looks like exactly what Donald Trump said it was like talking to the Brits when asking for them to help, saying, oh, we sort of might have an aircraft carrier or 2. Yeah. How many ships do you have altogether? Yeah. And they're like, oh, a lot are being serviced. And yeah, it's not looking great. And I think, again, that this is truly the fiscal constraint that is very much coming for the U.S. beyond the in my view, the way that this undermines deterrence against revisionist powers like China and Russia.
Well, let's keep on talking about Iran and how much it costs then. I mean, why not? That was going to be one of the things we were going to talk about. The Pentagon is requesting more than $200 billion from the White House to fund the war with Iran. That's quite a few rescue missions there, Jared. That's obviously soon going to become a request for Congress. Why they need $200 billion for a war that Trump says is going to end in 2 weeks is anyone's guess.
2 to 3 weeks. 2
to 3 weeks. Sorry, it could be an expensive third week. I don't know how this fits into that, but the war so far has cost maybe $50 billion before that rescue operation. Make it 51. $200 billion adjusted for inflation is still more than the cost of Afghanistan and the Iraq wars combined in 2009. So you add up both how much America spent on those 2 wars in 2009 and adjust for inflation, it's less than $200 billion for the entire year. And we got like a 1-month war and they're talking about $200 billion. And look, I get part of that is to urgently replace the missiles they've just used because they've used way too many missiles. I get that. But the annual defense budget is, we're going to get to it, the request for that's $1.5 trillion. And the reason it's $1.5 trillion is not because they want to splash money around everywhere. It's because they want to spend $350 million on missiles. Yeah. So they've already got the missiles taken care of in this next monstrosity budget, which we'll probably be discussing in 2 seconds. So I don't know why they need $200 billion. I mean, do you know what's going on there?
No, I don't. I haven't looked into that figure. But it really, what a lot of people are talking about is everyone keeps bringing it back to Iraq, which I don't think it is like for like. But they are saying that during the Iraq war, Democrats felt like they had no option but to go ahead with voting for the funding because they felt like they were leaving U.S. Military in the field and unprotected. I think the Democrats are conscious that that was they think that was a mistake and they don't want to do that again.
Yeah, okay. The Democrats certainly don't seem like they want to be giving them this money. In fact, the Republicans don't seem like they want to be giving this money in the House. Lauren Boebert has flat out said no to any supplemental bill at all. Any supplemental bill. She said, I'm a no. I've already told leadership I'm a no on any war supplemental. I'm so tired of spending money over there. I have folks in Colorado who can't afford to live. We need America First policies right now. Chip Roy said, what are we doing? We're talking about boots on the ground. We're talking about that kind of extended activity. Now we're in a whole nother zip code. They've got a whole lot more briefing and a whole lot more explaining to do on how we're going to pay for it and what's the mission here. He'll vote for it. He's running for Attorney General in Texas. He'll vote for it. He's just trying to sound tough. Thomas Massey says, it begs the question, how long do they plan to be there? What are the goals? Is this the first $200 billion? Does this turn to $1 trillion? I don't think he's going to vote for it.
Can I just add a quick sidebar on the time frame? His use of 2 to 3 weeks. That is one of his favorite
he loves it.
phrases. Do you know what he's used 2 to 3 weeks for altogether? Politico had a great article on this where they listed all the times he said 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks or some variation of that.
If you can find that, we'll put it in the homework, okay? Because that sounds like a great article.
The Russian-Ukraine war, it was going to be 2 weeks. He did this multiple times and beyond the 24 hours that he campaigned on. After announcing at the World Economic Forum that he had agreed on the framework of a deal over Greenland, the president told reporters on Air Force One that he'd have more details to offer on that framework in 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
That deal to bring TikTok under new ownership in June 2025.
I remember that.
2 weeks in June 2025.
Yes.
We got an update on that in January of this year.
Yeah.
There's tariffs endlessly about 2 weeks, the framework with China.
How many healthcare plans were going to come in 2 to 3 weeks?
That's my favorite. And this goes back to his first term of office, is not only is it infrastructure week, that was going to be in 2 to 3 weeks, but it was also when the Republicans were going to propose their own healthcare alternative to Obamacare, which I believe is still forthcoming.
It is. It's a very long 2 weeks. To be fair, though, Hegseth defended the request this way.
It takes money to kill bad guys.
Hard to argue with that. You might find this hard to believe, but Trump's answer was even worse than that. When he was asked why they needed $200 billion for a war that's supposedly over, this is what he said.
If the war is ending, do you still need $200 billion?
It's always nice to have.
Nice to have. What are your thoughts, Jared? Is it nice to have $200 billion?
He's never been a details-oriented guy. So I really do wonder if you were to offer him, millions of dollars to explain what's in that $200 billion request, what he would say. Because let's not forget that back in, I believe it was the 80s or 90s, I think I talked about this. There was this one satirical magazine that would send checks for like a few cents to celebrities to see which ones would cash it. And Trump would always cash the one for 2 to 3 to 4 cents. So if you could incentivize him to somehow explain exactly what's in the $200 billion, I'd love to see it.
And it's actually getting a little bit worse because the House is now talking about funding that request, if they do, with cuts to healthcare. House Budget Committee Chair Jody Arrington has suggested the Congress should revive cost-sharing reductions, which would save the federal government as much as $30 billion. Now, cost-sharing reductions is a technocratic, bureaucratic speak way of saying increasing deductibles and co-pays for your health insurance.
Can I just say, as a new Australian citizen, I find your private healthcare here to be adorable. It is so simple. It is so straightforward. I didn't get it. Because I was like, I'd probably use this. But still, it's like, you just pay this amount and then you get this back.
Yeah.
I don't think people appreciate enough how in the U.S. we don't even know what we're going to end up paying when we go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Like, it's so frustrating and it's so un-American because we are a nation, again, I've said this a million times, but we are a nation of laws, not of traditions, and not of just assumptions, right? It's the fact that we don't even know what we're going to pay when we go to the emergency room, and if we're knocked out and they bring in a specialist who's out of our network, then it increases our medical debt tenfold, and then that the insurance companies deliberately overinflate the prices on the services that they provide because they know they're going to have to negotiate. The whole thing is so fraught. And again, why was the Mangione murder of the healthcare execs nowhere near as widely condemned as many expected? For this very reason. It's not sustainable.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. It's obviously deliberately made complicated so they can charge more because no one knows what the hell's going on. It is a shocker. I agree.
It decreases economic mobility. It decreases labor mobility. It forces people to stay in places for far too long, forces people to stay in jobs for far too long. Like having lived now in Australia for almost coming up on a decade soon, it really is remarkable how the things that we don't have in the U.S., including healthcare and paid parental leave, I can see what it's like here. And I can see how in healthcare that people choose jobs they want to. and don't stay in jobs that they don't want to.
Yeah.
I could see how with parental cover, people are given job experience that they often wouldn't have otherwise. And it's actually, in many ways, a pretty good opportunity for people to get back into the workforce, at least temporarily. I can see what it's actually like. And I can't say it's all that bad.
No, it's not that bad. So the CBO has estimated it's going to cause 300,000 people to lose their health insurance by 2034 if they do increase the copays and the deductibles the way they're saying. Arrington, by the way, calls that fraud prevention.
So Harrington?
Arrington.
Who's that?
Jody Arrington is the House Budget Committee chair. He's one of those people who no one's heard of until they're gone about 6 years later. That only raises $30 billion. So I'd love to know where the other $170 billion is coming from. Probably nowhere good. But as an aside, there was a report from Public Citizen about the 446 hospitals that are at risk of closure. You might be interested in this, Graham Plattner, because of the last bunch of healthcare cuts to save money in the big, beautiful bill. Those hospitals account for 68,986 beds. They employ approximately 275,000 direct patient care workers. They're not including non-medical workers, by the way. Nearly 20% of at-risk hospitals are serving high poverty areas. These hospitals exist in 44 states, but 5 blue states in particular, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Washington, California, are going to have more than a quarter of their hospitals at risk. That's right now, just because the big beautiful bill. You start taking more money out of the system, there'll be more hospitals closing down. That's what closes down hospitals. And then we've got the budget request, which we were joking about before we started recording this, about the fact that just file it straight to the round file, no one gives a toss. But, it's some indication of the kind of numbers that we're starting to deal with. A $1.5 trillion budget request for defense from the Trump administration. That's not counting the $200 billion supplemental. That's on top of that. That's a 43% increase to the Pentagon's budget. That would be the largest year-over-year increase in military spending since the Korean War, at a time when America supposedly won't be at war next year. Like I said before, $350 billion of that is supposed to be invested in new munitions and missiles, which are needed. And there's a bunch of shipbuilding happening, which is needed. America's shipbuilding is not great at the moment.
Have you ever gone on a libertarian rant about the Jones Act?
Oh, yes, I have.
Great.
That's 101 for libertarians.
Yeah, I was going to say. I was wondering when.
Disgrace.
I haven't heard it, but excuse me.
I did that way at the beginning of PEP. I should probably reboot that one.
Because everyone's saying maybe this is the Strait of Hormuz and everything else is like these circumstances call for it.
I won't do it now. Well, let's put a pin in that one. I'll come back to that one again, guys. I've already talked about the budget. Just a reminder, you got $2.2 trillion in total discretionary spending per year, right? Including the $1.5 trillion in this budget. Mandatory spending on entitlements like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid is $4.8 trillion in 2027. You got interest payments of $1.1 trillion. You have $5.9 trillion of compulsory spending when you add up those two, 4.8 trillion plus 1.1 trillion. There's $5.8 trillion of projected revenue, which means before we even begin the discretionary spending, you're in deficit. And then you've got $2.2 trillion, a lot of which is going to the poor, apart from the $1.5 trillion going to defense. So, yes, you need the missiles. Yes, you need the shipbuilding, but maybe take it out of the $1.1 trillion in the rest of the defense budget. Or maybe, just maybe, here's the libertarian in me talking again, maybe get them to pass an audit just once. And then you might be able to save some money from defense.
Have you ever drilled down into the defense budget and tried to see why they can't pass an audit?
Could anyone drill down into that defense budget?
Exactly. It's not simple stuff. It feels good to say just pass an audit. It is
AI.
It is notoriously complex. And, you know, the F-35, for instance, I've heard not sure if this is 100% true, but the F-35, the most expensive jet that the U.S. has ever made, essentially, has components of it made in basically every state in the union. Because the defense budget is not just a defense budget. It is industry policy, right? It is making sure that every member of Congress is happy. Supposedly, there's even one state that literally makes the F-35 figurines, like the models that people bring into offices or whatnot, right?
So that's a waste of money.
You're right. You're right. The libertarian in you can't hide. But you also have to look at the political realities.
I know.
That you have to get people to be brought on board. This is the same reason why John McCain famously fought against pork barreling, right? And what people found after, and pork barreling is basically the instances of the bridge to nowhere, right? So someone built a bridge and no one ends up using it because some member of Congress insisted that they needed it for their district. But once they got rid of pork barreling, what they found is that there was actually less compromises. Democracies are not efficient.
Yeah.
Democracies are not straight lines. They are simply more sustainable than any other form of government.
Jared, I know you're right. I know you're right.
Thank you. Done. Let's go.
I know you're an intelligent man and all the rest of it. I just can't. I'm sorry. I can't let it go. Surely if a budget chair or a defense chair or whatever puts together a budget, which doesn't have any of that bullshit, and they make it as small as possible, and then they go, you know what? If you don't like the fact that some widget isn't being built in North Carolina, vote against the defense budget. I dare you. They're going to vote for it.
Yeah, that's why the National Defense Authorization Act is a Christmas tree.
But I'm saying that the reason it's a Christmas tree is because they're helping each other.
Yeah.
But I just don't buy that you need that to make the defense budget get through. Because the reality of politics. I don't buy that.
So you're saying make it less of a Christmas tree and it'll still pass?
Yes. I'm saying you don't need any you scratch my back, I scratch yours to pass the defense budget. Republicans and Democrats, for that matter, are going to pass the defense budget without any payoffs or pork. It's not necessary. It's the defense budget. They're talking about $1.5 trillion, Sharon. They'll sign off on anything. So anyway, I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong. I'm definitely wrong. But that's what I think.
I think you should bring in some defense budget experts and see just how hard it is to actually pass.
Okay.
Because it might pass all the public votes, but the Congress is pretty old and has all sorts of ways of people slowing things down when it doesn't have their pet project.
He's a wise man. That's Jared Mondschein. He's a wise man.
Just make sure my mom listens to this podcast. All these compliments.
Anyway, so at the end of the day, Trump is now starting to say things like this, which, by the way, remember, until recently, Trump was all about not cutting Medicare, not cutting Medicaid, Mr. Populist. Now he's saying shit like this.
We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it, too. They should pay. They have to raise their taxes, but they should pay for it. And we could lower our taxes a little bit to them to make up for, but it's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection.
And this was the day before when Marco Rubio said this.
Imagine in Iran that instead of spending their wealth, billions of dollars supporting terrorists or weapons, had spent that money helping the people of Iran, you'd have a much different country.
Cheap? Is that cheap shot?
Yeah, so you're equating the U.S. defense budget with Iran's support of Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthi rebels.
I'm not saying the defense budget is a terrorist budget. What I am saying is that spending money on weapons and guns instead of spending it on the people. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, weapons and guns for what cause? Are all causes the same? Just weapons and guns?
No. I'm saying for what cause? For whatever cause you're using weapons for, defense, whatever. The point is, there is only there is a limit to how much you need to spend on defense. You can't spend your entire budget on defense.
You're right. Find me Democratic national security experts who agree with you that we should cut defense spending. There aren't that many.
I didn't say cut it. Maintain is fine.
Okay.
They raise it by 44%, Jared.
Okay, so you're saying, I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from. So you want an increase, but not too much of an increase.
I think that that in a year when there isn't a war, you could have a little bit of a peace premium. You could maybe knock a couple of billion off, but not by much.
So maybe next year, not the year when China is expected to be able or hoping to be able to take Taiwan.
What I do think is that there are things that you need to spend it on, obviously. Shipbuilding, munitions, things like that. Yeah, of course. But I don't believe they need to spend every single cent they spend on defense.
Yeah, I agree with you. What I'm basically touching on is the fact that in foreign policy communities, both Democratic and Republican, there's an agreement that the defense budget needs to increase.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you an example. The number of people I've seen write articles about the things they are investing money in, the big ships, and the big planes and all that stuff, when the future of warfare is clearly going to be drones and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You just go, what are they doing? Like that, those things cost huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
Are they going to be that useful? I don't know. I feel like there isn't a lot of financial pressure on these guys because what they ask for, they get. And it's,
yeah.
I might be wrong.
It's a fraught process.
Yeah.
Democracy is pretty messy.
Yeah.
And but I don't think they call America an insurance company with a big army for a reason. This is the America that has been this way for some time.
Well, let's put it this way, Jared. If they desperately need that much weaponry and they desperately need to spend that much on defense, maybe they shouldn't be pissing off NATO. How about that?
Hence my quote in Australian media, literally today, saying, I can't remember how I phrased it, but something to the effect of, unlike prior presidents, Donald Trump sees NATO as an entanglement, not a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
That's
Donald
all
Trump
I want to hear.
Trump should not be pissing off NATO because America saves money by having allies and partners.
Yeah.
And we forget that China wants what America has. China wants to have bases around the world.
Yeah.
And instead of seeing that as an advantage, China's America, or at least Donald Trump, is saying, no, this is something that is risky and something that we are doing as a favor for you. It's funny how China will pay for it and America is expecting more payment for it.
Yes. Let's talk about what's been happening this week, though. That was all very general. First of all, the Strait. According to Lloyd's List Intelligence, 53 ships got through the Strait of Hormuz last week, up from 36 the week before, and there have been about 200 ships that have gotten through for the entire war. Some paid tolls, some apparently didn't. But that leaves about 2,000 ships stuck in the Persian Gulf waiting. I didn't warn you about this, it's just out of nowhere, but I wanted to spare a thought for those ships, because we never talk about the ships in the Persian Gulf. In particular, you have to talk about the sailors in the ships in the Persian Gulf. We've been just waiting there for a month. Most of the crews on those ships are from poor Asian countries. They're not Europeans, they're not Americans, so people kind of ignore them. They don't get in the media. They've been running out of fresh food and water for some time. Now, some have been fishing for food. Some have been collecting water from their air conditioners, the condensation in the air conditioners. You can buy food, but it's real expensive and it's real hard to deliver as well. So, but it's not that. I don't think that that the various door delivery services, which I'm not going to promote, I don't think they get to the Persian Gulf too easy. And so it's also tough to fly crew in and out as well. So it's been a bit of an ordeal for them. That might be about to change, though, because Oman and Iran have been supposedly drawing up a protocol for ships going forward, and I'm sure it'll involve a toll. And after Trump's whole European countries should just go and get their oil themselves speech, some of them did. They did the predictable thing and struck deals with Iran, like we said they would on the PEP last week. France went and did it. Their deal may or may not have been related to France helping to block a US push to get the UN Security Council to authorize military action against Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Might be related, might not be related. I don't know, but France did vote against that. Americans got extremely angry about that, by the way.
The Americans being angry at the French is not exactly a new story.
That's
I'm
right.
old enough to remember freedom fries.
Yes. And if you, for those who aren't old enough to remember that was what the Americans did to get back at the French after the Iraq War, when they thought they weren't being supported by the French. Well, they weren't being supported by the French. They renamed French fries freedom fries just to get them.
Not nationally, in the congressional cafeteria.
Yeah.
You made it sound like they passed legislation that all French fries in America were to be called freedom fries. But I think what I loved about it was the way that Democrats really did not like George Bush whatsoever. And it was a really polarized time, especially by 2004, 2005. With that said, I found it fascinating how Democrats really didn't like when other countries like France mocked George W. Bush. It's like there was, unlike now, there was still some pride in the office of the presidency. It's like, no, we can make fun of George W. Bush. You can't.
Yeah. Those days are long gone.
Yeah. But also, it also reminds me of how anti-Americanism has changed. And now I remember traveling in 2004, 2005, and it was a very different experience as someone with an American accent traveling overseas compared to now. Now, if I'm overseas, most people assume I don't support Donald Trump because most Americans who go overseas don't support Donald Trump. Whereas in 2005, I think George W. Bush was really seen as more of a mainstream type of character, not an aberration. I think a colleague at the U.S. Studies Center, Brendan O'Connor, has some excellent research on anti-Americanism that I encourage people to check out.
So you're saying it's better for Americans now than it was under Bush?
Yeah. People feel bad for America.
Yeah,
they say this is a mess. You have a reality TV show as your president. On the whole, right? At the same time, people also often they want to gauge my political views. I can't remember if I've mentioned this, but I've found a way to tell Uber and taxi drivers whether they're Trump supporters or not. Do you know what it is?
What is it?
I ask them in different ways. I ask them about cultural things. Is the biggest tell if they're a Trump supporter. I ask them about what they think about various social issues, or I just ask them, what their kids do and would their kids ever want to do this sort of thing. And the number one tell is it's not like finance, it's not foreign policy or economics, it's not foreign policy. It is really cultural issues. In my experience, is the number one tell for whether a stranger is a Trump supporter or not.
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
So I ask about diversity in one way or another.
Yeah,
right.
That'll work.
Yeah,
sure.
Immigration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you talk about your family and their views on things.
Oh yeah.
Right. But the family that have more explicit views on race probably vote one way more often than the ones who have more explicit views on gender.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a very specific tell I've noticed. I guess the saying is not all Trump supporters are very racist, but almost all very racist people vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that in my experience has been when people try to when people find out, one, I'm American, and two, my job is literally to talk about America. They're like, oh man, do I have a way to fill the next 25-minute Uber ride for you?
Do you reckon that I know what you're talking about there? I'm not American, but people do associate me with talking about America. So I've had a couple of couple of car trips recently, I got to say. Also, I should say Iraq has given permission to send ships through the strait as well. So we've got France, we've got Iraq. Iran called them a brotherly country, Iraq. Meanwhile, the Gulf countries are kind of sick of this shit, and they are the ones who are looking to escalate. Not like Trump up and down. No, they're just up. They want to force Iran to open the strait. Bahrain were the ones who sponsored that UN resolution I referred to before. The UAE has volunteered to help any coalition that will force Iran to open the strait. I personally don't see how you can guarantee that some missiles won't get through. I just don't see how. I mean, I can see you can force them to open up for a second. I don't see how you can force them to keep it open.
The thing is, it's not just missiles, right? It's just like
drones, whatever.
Landmines.
It's just too hard.
Literal teenagers can keep the Strait of Hormuz closed.
And it just takes one drone to send insurance premiums skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you send one drone once a week.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. So I don't see how this happens without a deal. Where we left things on Thursday in the last PEP, Trump had declared his fictional girlfriend from Canada. Sorry. I meant his mystery reasonable regime in Iran that he's negotiating with. I'm sure they exist. Had asked for a ceasefire.
What's the Australian version of girlfriend in Canada?
She goes to another school.
Really? That's what it is?
That's what the kids say. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
You wouldn't know her. She goes to another school.
He tweeted, Iran's new regime president, much less radicalized and far more intelligent than his predecessors, have just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire. We will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free and clear. Until then, we're blasting Iran into oblivion, or as they say, back to the Stone Age. Okay. Iran obviously denied that they were negotiating like that. Multiple US intelligence agencies assessed the Iranian government is not currently willing to engage in substantial negotiations about ending the war. Not clear what's going on there.
Can I just add, it's a bit frustrating that there isn't any listening to expertise on Iran. Do you know what those drones are called?
What are they called?
The Iranian drones are called?
The Shahids.
Yeah, do you know what that means?
What does that mean?
Martyr. Do you know what Shia Muslims prize far more than Sunnis? Martyrdom.
Yeah.
Suffering is integral to Shia Islam.
Yeah.
And Iran sees itself as the sort of the main center of Shia thought. And Trump is effective with dictators and with essentially like mafiosos. Like in Venezuela, right? But when people have ideological beliefs that are not motivated by national interest or self-interest, he really doesn't understand what their what that belief system is or how it works or how to work with it. Let's not forget what his former chief of staff said when he visited Arlington Cemetery. Do you remember this?
This is the suckers and losers.
Why? And he couldn't understand why they would give their life for their country.
Yeah. I'm talking about the people who died in war. He called them suckers and losers, allegedly. Yeah.
Americans killed in action. It made no sense to him why they would do that, right? It also, because that is not motivated by self-interest. He doesn't get it.
Doesn't get it, no.
It just doesn't compute for him.
It's like the flip side of, I think I mentioned this on PEP, maybe even to you at one point in time a while back, that Trump should have, I'm not surprised that Trump has such success in his discussions and his relationships with Middle East oil barons.
Yeah.
Because that's his mindset.
Yep.
That they're cool with corruption.
Yep.
They're cool with autocrats. They're cool with money talks, with no ideology, with self-dealing. They're cool with all the shit that he does. Like, he is essentially like a Western version of an oil baron.
Exactly. And what have we learned about him is that he is indifferent to a country's domestic political constraints. Why is he having such a bad, did he have such a bad falling out with Modi? Because Trump wanted Modi to nominate Trump for the Peace Prize for negotiating a ceasefire between Pakistan and India. For domestic political reasons, Modi could never do that. Modi would never, as powerful and popular as he is, he could never actually say, I needed Trump to negotiate a ceasefire with Pakistan because of domestic political constraints, right? Modi is not the full authoritarian dictator that some may have thought he was, because he still has domestic constraints. And Trump, it just doesn't really compute that. He also doesn't understand ideology. So him blowing up bridges and energy facilities, that doesn't really hurt the regime. If anything, that emboldens it. And I think, I saw this one expert say, Iranians want the regime gone and they don't want the country destroyed. Now they fear that the country will be destroyed and the regime will remain. And that's what's just frustrating, is that any expert on Iran could have told you that blowing up the country, like bridges and energy facilities, that in many ways plays into the government's hands. You already have a vast majority of the population in Iran supporting the strikes, right? We know that the government only has 10, maybe 15% of loyalty amongst the population. Taking this course of action and only increasing the tension and escalating, I just don't see how this is somehow weakening the regime. To many Iranians, it looks like desperation.
I agree with all that. I feel like, I should just go back a little bit just to say what we're working up to there.
Sorry.
No, yeah, right. That's fair enough. And then we'll continue on, like from where you are there. I was going to talk about the speech. Let's leave the speech for a second. Let's go after the speech.
Yeah.
To build up to what you're talking about. Everything after the speech is being about this deadline, which has just taken place as far as the PEP listeners are concerned, but has not taken place as we record this, which is very awkward for us as we record this. But anyway, I'll get your prediction on what has just happened, by the way, Jared, in a second. But since the speech, everything's been working towards its deadline. The deadline is 8 p.m. Tuesday night Eastern, so Wednesday 10 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne, which is past when the listeners are listening to this. On March 21, Trump tweeted out, this is when it all started, if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Then on March 23, 48 hours later, or close to it, he tweeted out, I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding the complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed and constructive conversations which will continue throughout the week. I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Drink. Then on March 27, 4 days later, he tweeted out, as per Iranian government request, please let this statement serve to represent that I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6th, 2026 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by the fake news media and others, they are going very well. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Drink. Then on March 30th, he tweeted out, that's 3 days later, if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells and Karg Island, and possibly all desalinization plants, which we have purposefully not yet touched. This will be in retribution for our many soldiers and others that Iran has butchered and killed over the old regime's 47-year reign of terror. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Drink. Definitely drink after that one. I don't know why he's threatening to blow up Iran's water supply. If he thinks the strait will naturally open up by itself anyway, as he said in the speech, we might go back and listen to him say that another time. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, do you remember at the start of the war, he told the Iranians that after a while they'd be able to just take back their government? But he said, just for now, stay home to be safe. Too many bombs. Stay home. And then you can rise up afterwards. Right now it's not safe, okay? Why is he now punishing the Iranian citizens who still haven't left their homes by blowing up their power supply and drinking water and the oil they'll use to rebuild their country? I thought he was trying to help them. Why would he now punish them? Doesn't make a lot of sense. But then we got to the truly psychotic bit, which was when Trump first bombed the bridge. No suggestion the bridge was a military asset at all. It hadn't even been fully built yet. And then he tweeted, "The biggest bridge in Iran comes tumbling down, never to be used again, much more to follow. It's time for Iran to make a deal before it's too late and there's nothing left of what still could become a great country." And reportedly I say, that was a double tap strike, which means they waited an hour until rescue workers arrived and then bombed it again, so that would also hurt the rescue workers. I say reportedly because that is a flat-out war crime, and it's not been reported by every publication. You never know with this war. There's a real problem with transparency in this war generally.
I think, beyond just the Trump administration themselves being not very transparent, usually CENTCOM, Central Command, which covers the Middle East and the U.S. military, is more forthcoming with exactly what they've done and how and why. But they have been far less forthcoming than usual. So even veterans and former senior defense officials can only really piece together guesses of what's actually going on. So it is beyond the fact that we haven't seen a very clear articulation of strategy, ends, desired outcomes, etc. We also are trying to make sense of the very little information we are getting, or comparatively far less information than what we're accustomed to getting in these sorts of operations.
Absolutely. Remember, until recently, press used to ride along with the army. They're not doing that now. And I know they were compromised by riding along with the army because, they obviously get the army's point of view, but they can also walk around and have a look for themselves. They can't do that now. You've only got the B team turning up at press conferences as well in the Pentagon. And they're being increasingly shuttled away further and further from the action. You got also on the Iran side, they've got the internet shut down. So we're not getting stuff from Iran. UAE literally jails people for sending out photos and videos. So it just on all sides, there's just so little transparency. And we're dealing with some serious liars here in the Trump administration and Iran. In fact, Iran, I honestly think are bigger liars than Trump, which is amazing. You have to work very hard to be a bigger liar than Trump, but I think they've done it. I really do. And so there's just so much bullshit. It's really, really hard. But anyway, so that's why I'm being careful with this one. If they did do the double tap strike, that's one of Putin's favorite tricks. So maybe he taught Trump about that one. Trump told Axios the US and Iran were close to an agreement to hold direct negotiations, but then they said they'll meet us in 5 days. So I said, why 5 days? I felt they were not serious, so I attacked the bridge. If it was a double tap strike, that doesn't explain why it was. But in response, Iran then refused the negotiations completely. Iran declared on Friday they would not meet with US officials in Pakistan at all, saying the White House demands are unacceptable. And then, on Easter Saturday, Trump tweeted, "Remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait? Time is running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them. Glory be to God," President Donald J. Trump. Jared, I'm halfway through a story here, but glory be to God, I feel that's worth noting. That's new for Trump. Glory be to God. I'll blow you up. He's sounding like he's just been to one of Pete Hegseth's prayer meetings there. I don't know. I mean, is that notable to you? Because that to me really stood out. On Easter Saturday, glory be to God. I'm going to send you all to hell if you don't do a deal.
Yeah, I mean, what's then interesting is what I'm not sure if it's the subsequent
The
tweets.
next one. Yeah, I'll read that. I'll read it. I know you go.
So because then it mirrors that. But also, no one does the SIC on rain. Wrong rain.
Yeah, that's true. He misspelt rain.
But what's crazy is when you actually get to...
That is probably his greatest crime.
No, but what's crazy is when you actually get to Scavino, who says that he will sometimes deliberately misspell things to make it look more authentic.
It is funny, yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah.
I'm not trying to belittle very serious stuff, but glory to be God is weird.
Yeah.
But again, it goes into his escalating rhetoric, and he only escalates to end in a negotiated outcome. He does this time and time again. He did this with North Korea. He does this with Democrats. This is just, it's like a one-trick pony.
Yeah, he's got one trick. I completely agree. And then he started tweeting crazy shit like, with a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait, take the oil, and make a fortune. It'll be a gusher for the world. I don't know what take the oil means. He keeps saying take the oil. He's not like robbing a 7-Eleven. You'd need to be there for years to take the oil, and then you'd be an absolute juicy terror target if you were. I'm not sure how that helps in the negotiations either. To say, hey, you know how we're negotiating? It's all in bad faith. We're going to steal your shit. Yay! I don't know. But anyway, then we have the tweet you're talking about, which was on Easter Sunday. Just when he woke up on Easter Sunday, he tweets out, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There'll be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. Yeah, as you say, the bookends there of the religious mockery. I mean, that's just full-on mockery of Islam on Easter Sunday. As I said, I'm playing in America. I don't know at what point he's just turning into a terrorist threatening civilians at this point in time. Because, I mean, like, that is pretty crazy shit. What you're saying is absolutely true. Of course, that is his trick. He just has this one trick he just does all the time, escalate to de-escalate, and Iran just ain't buying it. So he has to just keep on escalating further and further and further, and he's going to run out of room soon.
Edward Wong in the New York Times has a story about this being one of the first times that a president explicitly threatens war crimes.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It is. Do you agree that these are war crimes he's threatening?
It does seem that he is threatening that, and I think some in the Trump administration were saying that, there's dual use of these facilities.
Okay. No, go on.
I want to hear your rebuttal of that.
Yeah.
You're ready.
I'm ready.
And also, sorry, before we get to that,
go for it.
Can I just say, I don't understand why people took exception to him swearing like that on Easter Sunday.
Whatever, yeah.
Like a number of people highlighted that, saying, the goal of him to have, I'm just, what are you missing? Like, are you not paying attention to who he is and the way he talks? Yeah. He was just giving a press conference and he said bullshit multiple times. But somehow when he does this, an F-bomb changes everything.
I noted I know the swearing as well, but not because I was offended by it, and especially not on Easter Sunday, but just because I just thought it just showed he's increasingly out of control.
Yeah.
It's a sign of him running out of buttons to push. He can only hit that red button as hard as he possibly can. He's breaking his thumb on that button now. On the war crimes thing. All right. Yeah, you're right. I'm ready for that one. Power plants and other critical civilian infrastructure are generally protected from attacks by the laws of war that America wrote after World War II. People often say, well, hey, the military need power. The military need bridges. These are military targets, aren't they? Military need water, don't they? The rule is this. A piece of infrastructure is a civilian target unless the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated outweighs the civilian suffering that is expected to result. That's what the Geneva Convention says. That's what the DoD Law of War Manual says. I think when you're talking about desalination plants, the suffering that the civilians are going to have are significantly more than the military benefit of a desalination plant. I think when you're talking about power stations for cities, the military can just piss off somewhere else. The people are there in the city. And the suffering that causes to the hospitals, to the emergency centers, to all the rest of it, is much more than the military benefits to the military. So all because the military use the same facilities does not mean you can get away with doing it whatever you like to those facilities. It has to be a balance between the suffering of the civilians versus the military benefit. And I think I could get away. I think bridges you can get away with.
Yeah.
Bridges you can get, as long as there aren't a million cars on that bridge at the time. And look, and to be fair, that bridge he blew up was being built, okay?
Yeah.
So there weren't a million cars. As long as there aren't a million cars, I can see bridges you go, look, that's actually probably more a military, I mean, it's inconvenient for people, but it's not causing suffering. Power stations, water desalination plants, to me, that's an absolute no-brainer. That's a war crime under my book. I don't know, what do you think?
I think, yeah, there can be very clear definitions of war crimes, and then there can be the very clear instance of the past of basically the victors deciding what is a war crime. Dresden in World War II. Yeah. Right? It's a very ugly reality. I'm not trying to muddy the waters here whatsoever, but this is the practical reality that I see time and time again, is that the as Trump said in his recent press conference, to the winner goes the spoils, to the winner goes the definition of war crimes.
No, look, you're absolutely right. We rarely talk about the firebombing of Tokyo as rampant war crimes, but I mean, I think by any definition, if that happened today, people would say, yeah, that's 100% war crimes. Yeah. Yeah. It's, so it's, yeah, I agree there. To the victor goes the definition of war crimes. That is true. Okay. Let's go down the road that you were talking about before about what this means and all the rest of it. Like I thought, because I stopped you to just give the background, because that's what's leading up to this. I should say also, when Trump was asked about hurting innocent civilians by blowing up all this stuff, this is what he said. Let's be fair to the guy. To be fair, Trump said he thinks civilians who oppose their government would support such strikes to weaken the regime. Quote, they're living in fear. They're afraid we're going to leave in the middle of the war, but we're not going to leave. You did just give a speech where you said you're going to leave in 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm pretty sure after that last tweet, people would be pretty scared of Trump. But that's what he's saying. So, tell me more about your thoughts about this whole strategy. You've said the one-trick pony thing. I agree with you about that his trick is escalating to de-escalating, and it's not working in Iran because, A, they're prepared to call his bluff, which they have many times. 2, they think him sounding crazy is good. Iran analyst Hamidreza Azizi wrote, the combination of maximalist threats, the absence of a clear political endpoint, and the lack of a practical plan for reopening Hormuz allows Tehran to portray Washington not as dominant, but as strategically incoherent. 3, they want them to do crazy shit because that drives Iran back to them. The Iranians hate them. But if the other option is a dude going around blowing up desalination plants, they're coming back to the government.
I don't know if they're coming back to the government.
Compared to Trump?
I don't think they come, even then, I don't think they come back to government. This is the same government that killed 30, 40,000 in just a matter of days.
No, it's not. That government's dead.
It's the same government, and if anything, it's only a more emboldened
government.
It is.
It is a more emboldened version.
I don't think that they're going back to the Iranian government. I think, if anything, they just feel abandoned by the U.S. This is, if you look at the Islamic Republic and popular support within Iran for them, the high watermark for them was 1979.
Yeah.
They have only been going down every single year since, essentially, in one way or another. Or maybe you could say that high water mark was 1980 and Iran-Iraq war, nationalism, et cetera. But if you look at how their protests have expanded over the last 20 years, going from beyond students, going from beyond not just students, but going to reformer candidates, going to women, going to bazaris, going to basic people, everyday people, right? The Islamic Republic of Iran, that regime is only losing support. Now, the question is, what is the Trump administration doing with this? And at the end of the day, the Islamic Republic still has a monopoly on power in Iran, and it has shown a complete absence of any reluctance to kill as many as necessary. I think I've talked about this before, but I still look back to Libya with the U.S.-led coalition taking out Gaddafi. Gaddafi did exactly what the United States wanted him to do. He denuclearized. And what did they do as a response? They let him basically get sodomized and murdered in the streets. A lot of people say that is what changed Putin's mind more than anything else, that the U.S. would never actually accept anyone doing the right thing, that they just want everyone's death. I mention that because it's ugly, it doesn't make you feel good, but perhaps Gaddafi should have been offered a penthouse suite in some random third country, right? For having done the right thing. Because you want to incentivize more people to do the right thing. Same thing here. It's not clear to me how or if the United States has offered any incentives to the regime.
I can tell you, according to Trump, they have.
Right.
According to Trump.
Yeah.
Trump said they offered immunity to the...
How? What? Why would they believe Trump? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, I'm not...
I heard that too, and I'm just like, no, you need an actual carrot and stick process for this. It's invading countries is not a new phenomenon in human history. There are ways to take off the elites, and right now the Trump administration is giving them either death by airstrike or death by their own countrymen. It's an existential battle, and he's giving them only sticks.
That's fair enough. Let me revise what I was saying before and see if you'll jump on board with this one. Rather than saying Trump doing crazy shit drives him into the arms of the government, Trump doing crazy shit makes it impossible to see them trying to overthrow the government.
Yes.
Because we could get to a point where Israel's got them on the run. They're taking out the guards in the street and all the rest of it. They've killed person after person. There's drones all over the place. And the people come out in a big protest and potentially, I'm not saying it will happen like, storming the Bastille, but the people could make an inroad, potentially, if they could get some kind of sort of protest going at the right time.
Yeah.
No one's running out in the street right now while Trump's bombing water facilities, and afterwards it's just going to be complete chaos.
Yeah.
It's just going to be anarchy if he does, which the big question is coming now. I should say as well, there's no doubt, for whatever their logic is, even if they're wrong, that the Iranian administration are playing the game that, you keep on threatening us and we're going to keep on saying no. Because that's exactly what they did. After the crazy tweet, this was an Iranian foreign affairs spokesperson.
Negotiation in no way involves an ultimatum, a crime, or a threat to commit war crimes. The Islamic Republic of Iran and the Iranian nation have a very, very bitter experience of negotiating with America, and we did not gain these experiences lightly to simply ignore them. A few days ago, through intermediaries, proposals were put forward which became known as the 15-point American Plan. Conveyed via Pakistan and some other friendly countries, at that time we also announced that such proposals are both excessively demanding and unreasonable and illogical.
The bitter experience he's referring to there is the fact that twice now America has attacked Iran in the middle of negotiations, and they are not letting America forget that. And I should say Dave in real time said that would be a mistake. So Trump's threats aren't working. It's driving Trump to push harder and harder. Also, I should say his speech was a huge bomb, which, pardon the pun, one of his own supporters told Zateo that he sounded like Joe Biden during that speech. He presumably wanted to sound extra tough in response. That encourages him talking tough as well. He probably also wanted a distraction, because remember, his crazy tweet was written while the soldier was lost from the jet before he'd been rescued. And he thought he might have a bad news story on his hands there. And so he probably wanted to have people talking about something else other than the lost soldier. They did obviously rescue him afterwards, as you say, $300 million rescue. Since that's happened, all that, on Monday morning, both Iran and Trump rejected a proposed 45-day ceasefire. According to Trump, negotiations have continued. He told Axios, there's a good chance, but if they don't make a deal, I'm blowing up everything over there. He told the Wall Street Journal Iran would lose every power plant in Tuesday's strikes. Once again, saying very war crimey, every power plant. Also, they got 500 power plants, so good luck on that one. He told Fox the big thing is they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They're not even negotiating that point. It's so easy. It's already been conceded. Most of the points are conceded. Not sure why you're threatening to blow up everything if most of the points have been conceded. But anyway, and one more reminder before I ask you the toughest question of all, Jared. Earlier this year, when the New York Times asked whether Trump felt any meaningful constraints to his power, Trump said, I quote, "Yeah, there's one thing, my own morality. My own mind, it's the only thing that can stop me." And that's very good. So, with all that in mind, Jared, you can say anything you want about that, but I want to ask you the toughest question. Every single person listening to this knows what happened after the deadline. So why don't you tell them what just happened in their timeline?
If I had to guess, there's another tweet that progress was being made, and maybe there's a gift, maybe there's something positive, and as a result, there might be maybe not a 45-day extension, but maybe like a 10, 15-day extension of some sort. I would think it is less likely that he actually bombs all the energy facilities.
All 500 power facilities. No bombs? Are you saying no bombs?
I don't know if it's no bombs. I think it's less likely. Maybe there are bombs, but I think it's very unlikely that that he bombs a majority of the bridges and energy facilities, because that's something that you can't really bring back. And I think there's many in the U.S. government, I would imagine, would say that there are significant consequences for that.
Okay, these are my thoughts. 1, Trump has no moral problem at all with blowing things up and killing randos. He's demonstrated that plenty of times. 2, Trump has a big problem getting tied down in a war, and he knows that. 3, as soon as he hits some Iranian power plant, he knows Iran is going to 100% attack power plants of their own in the Middle East.
Allies, partners of the U.S.
Yeah, and oil wells and desalination plants and all the rest of it. A spokesperson for Iran's military has already made that clear. All energy infrastructure, as well as information technology and water desalination facilities linked to the US in the region, will be targeted. Bear in mind, they're all liars. Which would keep America, if that happened, that would keep America stuck in the war for longer. Much longer than the 2 more weeks that Trump just promised the other night. 2 to 3 more weeks. 4, if he pulls the trigger on the power plants and Iran still don't give up, which they won't, he will be out of escalatory tactics that don't involve boots on the ground, which he really wants to avoid, because if he goes boots on the ground, the war will stretch out for months.
Yeah.
And we're getting into election territory then. 5, he's boxed himself into a corner where he's made such wild threats that everyone on Earth is aware of those threats, and everyone on Earth will be aware if he backs down.
Yeah.
6, Iran know all of this, and they know if they agree to a ceasefire, they're going to take the pressure off Trump. The only 2 weapons they have left are the Strait of Hormuz and the ability to force Trump to put pressure on himself. I can't see them giving up that second element of that second weapon by taking the pressure off Trump. So they're not giving up under any circumstances as far as I can see. So put them all together, and this is what I think happens. I think I kind of agree with you. I think Trump comes up with an excuse to not bomb all the power plants. I could see him maybe bombing one either power plant or facility of some kind that's attached to the military in some way.
Yeah.
So that something he can justify for military reasons, and then he'll declare victory again in a week's time. He'll have mercy after the one. Look at this terrible thing I've done, but I'm not going to do more because I care about the Iranian people, etc. And then he'll declare victory in a week's time. I'm going the record here for something that's already happened. Very dangerous. I think it will just be too laughable if he goes, I'm just extending one more time. It's like the 4th extension. I think he needs to bomb something.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be all the shit he's been threatening.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be.
I think that's likely.
Yeah. So that would be my prediction. What one bombing raid on something that he can go, look at that, watch out, and then there'll be another declaration of victory. That's what I would say.
So we should clarify that Trump is deliberately trying to do the policy or strategy that Richard Nixon tried to do with the madman theory.
Yes. Right?
Mm-hmm. Or what I call in a more modern parlance, the Mike Tyson zone, where you just don't know what they're going to end up doing next. Are they going to save a baby? Are they going to murder a baby? Would you believe a headline that said either? And I should clarify that credit belongs to a sports blogger for coining that name, Bill Simmons. He really wants to go in either direction. The thing with Nixon is there was a deliberate ploy by Nixon with a very clear articulation within the government what he was doing with Henry Kissinger, what he was not doing, and how they were trying to compel the North Vietnamese to not be as involved or to lose vigor for their cause. The Trump approach to this is leaving not only Allies and Partners, Congress, the American people, but also his own cabinet unsure of what he's going to do next. The thing that I always go back to on this is his Liberation Day tariffs. What has he cared about more than even striking Iran, more than Venezuela? Tariffs, right? We know that from day one. He pulled the U.S. out of the Iran deal pretty quickly, but it was not a defining thing for him. Tariffs is what he cares about more than anything else. When did he decide those Liberation Day tariff rates? Do you remember?
That was
on Liberation Day. Like how soon before then?
Wasn't it the day of?
4 hours.
Yeah. yes.
4 hours before he decided. So over and over again, people ask me, what's Trump going to say in this speech? What's he going to do tomorrow? And it's just like, he doesn't even know. Yeah. How am I supposed to know? Right? Every day, he has said this from day one in his first administration. Every day is a new day. Every day is a new opportunity to vanquish his foes. And so he's going to feel it and see where he's at tomorrow. And he doesn't really pre-plan this stuff all that much.
I want to ask you one more question about the speech. We're going back a bit. Just because I'm going to skip the speech stuff. We talked about it in Play America. You can go watch that if you want. But I had a bit more detail. But there was one thing I want to ask you. On Planet America, I noted that going into Trump's speech, there was a lot of talk about whether he was going to announce the end of NATO in the speech, because he was very critical of NATO for those few days beforehand. And in Politico, the day before the speech, they wrote that Trump, quote, intends to harshly scapegoat NATO allies for the biggest unresolved matter of the war, Iran's ongoing restrictions of shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. In Reuters, the day of the speech, Trump was quoted as saying, one element of his speech would be to express his disgust with NATO for what he considers the alliance's lack of support for US objectives in Iran. He didn't mention NATO in the speech, not once. He mentioned Europe in a different context once. That's it. Yeah. Now, the Dispatch's Nick Katogo has a theory, which I want to throw to you. He noted that there was nothing new in this speech at all. The speech seemed utterly pointless. It was just a collection of his tweets, essentially. There's no point to this at all. And it was all over the place. It was contradicting itself. There was no through line. There was no momentum. His theory is that the speech was called originally in order to withdraw America from NATO. That was why it was called. And someone, one of his advisors, probably Rubio, convinced him that was a terrible idea. And he pulled back from the edge and took it out of his speech. And then there was no point to the speech. That's his theory. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it very well could be. I don't know. That's just complete guessing at that, right?
It is, yeah.
We have no idea. But again, look at what I've called before the difference between structure and agency. on the whole, do European interests align with U.S. interests a lot more than they misalign, right? Like, what you, I think, said it perfectly in why he was upset with NATO, because they weren't supporting U.S. objectives. What are the U.S. objectives? He's upset that NATO allies are not supporting the U.S. in doing something that the U.S. is not doing. U.S. doesn't have its Navy safeguarding ships there. He has not explained how he wants them to do it. He has not explained for how long he wants them to do it. He has not explained what an optimal end state would be for their participation. So, yeah. And then this is after he said those who did sacrifice alongside the U.S. in Afghanistan didn't really sacrifice all that much. It's like, what do you expect, right? It is purely looking at self-interest for these NATO and allied political leaders. Look at Trump's approval rating in their countries. He is underwater everywhere except for Israel, basically. Not only is he not popular, but this war is not popular. Neither is the energy costs. So
they bear a lot more than America does.
Very much so, especially in Asia.
Yeah.
So he wants them to, in addition to having to bear the cost of a war that he started in their minds, also risk their own troops in a way that has not been well defined. And so instead they can just sit on the sidelines and then say, look, we don't agree with this, and we don't agree, and we're trying everything we can to make energy cheaper. It really is one of those things where I think this is Trump using a lot of his agency, and structurally, I would imagine that within a few years, NATO will remain aligned and remain intact. And we have seen NATO partner countries leave NATO and come back to it. This would not be the first time. It would be the first time for the U.S. to do it. But this also would not be the first time for the U.S. to be a really difficult ally. You only have to look at Nixon, Guam doctrine there to see how the U.S. basically tanked the Southeast Asian economies, moving off the gold standard. The U.S. is really, really difficult. And I think what's that one line I've said before? America, supposedly a bunch of Europeans were complaining at NATO about the Americans and saying how Americans were selfish and reckless and unreliable. And the UK representative to NATO said, yep, everything you say about the Americans is true, but they're the only Americans we have. Yeah. What's the alternative?
Yeah.
How can Japan, Korea, Australia stand up to China without America? Literally impossible, right? How can Europe continue to arm and get targeting with Ukraine without America? Literally impossible. There's a whole wide range of literature talking about Plan B, especially including in Australia. But what really bothers me about these Plan B op-eds is that they talk about how America is this and that and frustrating, and then the last paragraph will be, we need to start to have a conversation about Plan B. I'm just like, you had 800 words to describe your Plan B, and yet you only wanted to articulate the problem for the first 700, and then in the last 100 say, let's talk about Plan B. No, talk about it. Tell me what your Plan B is, because every Plan B I've seen has seen a dramatic increase in defense spending.
Yeah.
Like a tripling.
Well, of course it's going to be. There's no other option than that, surely. I was just going to say that Australia, Japan, Korea, just never in a million years can they replace America. I was going to say Europe, on the other hand, I think from their point of view, the security interests that they're trying to protect, namely Russia, Ukraine, in the short term, there's issues there. But in the medium term, once again, they have to spend money. But I could totally see Europe in 20 or 30 years having a shitload of nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
Like France is already there, and they can help the rest of the continent. Like I can see Europe taking over, nuclear production and all the rest of it, like different countries, just like America does with their states. And I could see that happening. It would cost a lot. It's not going to be cheap, but I think it's viable. I don't think it's unviable, whereas I do think it's unviable for Japan, Korea, and Australia at any point in time in the future to be able to defend themselves against China without America. But I do think I think at least from Europe's point of view, and we're talking NATO after all, from Europe's point of view, I think in 15 years' time or 20 years' time, they're big enough to have a post-American defense strategy against Russia, I think.
I've done polling on this.
Yeah.
Americans think that their alliances keep them safer.
Well, good. Do.
So I don't say that for any other reason than the fact that the American people are on the side of maintaining their alliances and not abandoning NATO. So there's a long way of saying Trump is exercising almost unprecedented levels of agency here and pushing alliances to the point of what you would imagine be almost breaking them. But I still think even if he were to withdraw from NATO, that doesn't prevent the U.S. from coming back to it.
Yeah.
That doesn't prevent the U.S. Congress from voting the majority of it in favor of staying in NATO.
Well, he needs 2/3 of Congress to get out of NATO.
There are other ways for him to undermine it.
He can undermine it just by saying, I'm not going to honor it.
Right.
But that lasts as long as he's president.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, we have to look at long-term structural interests and whether they align or do not. And on the whole, I think they continue to align, obviously in Asia, but also in Europe.
One more question I want to ask you about. We talked about lack of transparency before, and it means that we just don't know what's going on in Iran. And I've been reading some things that...
This always ends really well. I've been reading some things.
I'm doing my research. I've been just reading stories here, stories there. They're just dribbling through in the American press. You just go, well, I wonder if we're not getting the full story here with Iran, which is what I'm referring to there is, for instance, the New York Times last week ran a story which we hadn't seen any mention of this until then, that many of the 13 US military bases were uninhabitable because of Iranian attacks, that they had actually hit the US bases a lot. In particular, a lot of their radar facilities and communications facilities were getting hit a lot. But there was a lot of attacks. In the first 2 weeks, Iran, according to the New York Times, had done $800 million in damage to those bases, according to the report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And also, they hit 10 American radar sites. And in the past 2 weeks, Iran had had more success targeting Israeli cities, Tel Aviv, Dimona, I don't know how you say it, the nuclear place, and Arad, because Israel's defense system is suddenly less effective, either because they've burned through a lot of their interceptor missiles or because Iran was starting to use cluster munitions and they were becoming more effective, or because they'd taken out a lot of the radar networks from America, whatever. Israel's defense system was becoming less effective over that 2 week period. And then I've got a graph here. Iran is starting, this open source intelligence here, Iran is starting to use more missiles again. If you have a look, Iran 2 weeks ago was using 23 missiles a day. That's the red line on the bottom is the missiles. Now it's in the high 30s. Over this 2 week period, so it's been gradually trending up again. It's not dramatic, but we keep on hearing they're running out of missiles, but actually the trend over the last few weeks is going up in missile usage. Then there was an article, according to CNN, that half of them in Iran's missile launchers and one-way attack drones are still operational. Some of them are buried underground, buried under rubble, and are inaccessible. But according to Israeli intelligence, the number of Iranian missiles, if you eliminate those buried under rubble, is still 20 to 25% of the original arsenal they have available above ground. And you shouldn't eliminate those under the rubble because it turns out, according to the New York Times, Iranian operatives have been digging out underground missile bunkers this whole period, often hours after an attack. They dig them out again. Also, apparently a large percentage of Iran's cruise missiles have remained intact, and they're the ones they use in the Strait, the ones that we're most worried about against the ships. And Iran's still getting deliveries from Russia and China, so they can get more missiles. They don't stop. So are we underestimating? I'm not suggesting, we're going, Iran's winning. I'm not saying like that, but I'm saying we've been conditioned from day 2 or day 3 to go, well, Iran's done as far as the fighting goes. They're just taking punishment now. Is it possible that they're fighting back more than we have been led to believe, and we are just in the dark because of a lack of information?
Yeah, no, it very well could be possible. We don't know. I don't think the Iranian regime is feeling all that confident, because if they were, then they would turn the internet back on.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a great call. Although having said that, the internet's been down for quite a while in Iran.
I think that's evident of the fact that they definitely have a majority of their population against them.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, this whole thing I've been talking about led to that F-15 jet being shot down with these missiles I've been talking about, and there was the rescue operation. Anyway, do you have anything else to say about Iran before we move on?
One last thing. Joe Kent.
Yes.
Lovely old Joe Kent. He shared on X that, quote, Iranian state-linked Tasnim News, citing a military source, claims U.S. forces are bombing areas in southwest Iran where a missing pilot may be located, alleging Washington has lost hope of recovery and is attempting to kill him.
Joe Kent said that. And he used to work for intelligence.
Exactly. And it's just like, a lot of people were shocked by that, to say, it's one thing to be against the war. It's another to say now American troops the American military is literally killing their own.
Yeah.
I think, not to sound too old, but in some ways you could say maybe Joe Kent jumped the shark on this one.
Yeah. I think he might have. I mean, because it's not only is it extremely unlikely they'd be trying to actively kill their own troops, but on top of that, there's such an easy alternative explanation of them trying to fight the people who are trying to get him. It's just so obvious.
While also like sharing Iranian state media news, and just the whole thing is hard to believe. And at what point do you become so far against the war that you actually become almost pro-Iranian and just saying, we're with the Iranian, like the Tucker Carlson turn, right? And just what point do you become so anti-Israel that you then start blaming the Jews for all the terrible things in the world?
One of the lessons of the Trump era, not just Trump era, even just before the Trump era, is that this partisan era in America is that being anti something is often more powerful than being pro something.
Yeah,
like we've seen a lot of respectable establishment Republicans who can't bear to be pro-Trump, being anti-Trump, and being like anti the guys who are anti-Trump, and then they're so much more dogged than some of the pro-Trumpers that they're distancing themselves from. It's quite interesting.
I think the National Review is the poster child of this.
Of the anti-Trumpism, yes, it is.
Yeah. They really tried to distance themselves from Trump so much. They are sort of the flag of the Republican Party for the longest time until Trump came along. And they never fully embraced him, but they definitely became the anti-Trump magazine.
Let's talk briefly about Hegseth sacking the Army's Chief of Staff, General Randy George. Now, he was appointed in September 2023 for 4 years. There's no sense he did anything wrong. No reason was given, either publicly or privately. No misconduct, no operational failure, no policy disagreement on the record. Just a phone call and a career ending in the middle of a very large war. In fact, he was seen as being the Army's most competent performer by a lot of people. And everyone says he's an excellent implementer of modernisation in the military. I have no idea if that's true. I'm just reading articles. So why was he sacked? There appear to be two of the pettiest reasons imaginable, as far as I can see. Do you want to say anything, or do you want me to just keep on going?
No,
quickly?
go ahead.
Okay. One, Hegseth likes interfering with the appointments of lower officers. He's not meant to do. He's meant to either take the whole slate or get rid of the whole slate and not micromanage, but he micromanages. There were 4 people on the list of 33 that Hegseth did not want to have a promotion to a one-star general, which he's not meant to go near. And the reason he didn't like those 4, we don't know the reasons for all 4 of them. We know 2 of them. They're pretty trivial. One of them had written a paper nearly 15 years ago that analysed why African-American officers historically have opted for support jobs over frontline combat positions. And 2, another one had served in Afghanistan during the 2021 withdrawal. They hadn't done anything wrong during the withdrawal. They served excellently, but they were part of that operation. And Hegseth held it against them.
Their races and genders.
By coincidence, out of these 4 people, 2 of them were black men and 2 of them were women. And these were not the first black men and women that Hegseth interfered with for promotion. He's blocked or delayed promotions for more than a dozen black and female senior officers across all 4 branches of the military. Some are wildly suggesting that race and sex could play a role here. He never gives official reasons for his interference. He doesn't target every black or female officer. That's important to point out. Some get through. But he may have a double standard where he has a much lower bar for what he interferes with when they're black or when they're female than what he will tolerate from someone who's not black or female. By the way, he's knocked out white men as well. But in terms of proportions, more black people, more white women.
Including the Admiral Franchetti, the Chief of Naval Operations, including C.Q. Brown, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yes.
Including the Commandant of the Coast Guard.
He sacked at least 24 generals and admirals who were almost all minorities. Now, after Hegseth's been through them, the chairman and vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all 5 service chiefs and 9 of the military's 10 combatant commanders are white men.
I do have to say, every time you watch a Trump press conference with anyone in the military or even John Radcliffe, he repeatedly talks about them coming from central casting.
Yeah.
We really can't overemphasize how much visuals.
And we think we know what that means. I should say as well, this has been going for a while. Last year, Major General Antoinette Gant was selected to command the military district of Washington. Hegseth's chief of staff told Driscoll, the Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, that Trump would not want to stand next to a black female officer at military events. Dan Driscoll supposedly said, the president's not racist or sexist, and he went over the chief of staff's head to the White House, and he won. Gant now serves in that role.
Driscoll is a close friend and former classmate of J.D. Vance.
Yes, that's right. I'm getting to him.
Thank you.
So 2 weeks ago, General George asks Hegseth to meet with him to discuss the removal of the 4 officers from the one-star list and his view that Hegseth was interfering unnecessarily in Army personnel decisions overall. Hegseth refused to meet with General George about this matter, and then Hegseth sacked him, this competent person in the middle of a war, because he wasn't making it easy for Hegseth to obsess about filtering out officers from the chain of command who may or may not be black and women. Okay, that's option 1. Option 2, and they might be both, is that Pete Hegseth hates Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll, who is a rival of his, a potential replacement of his, as you say, a school chum of J.D. Vance. He's considered to be a super effective performer, unlike Hegseth. While Hegseth was pushing up daisies because of Signalgate, Driscoll was out there trying to negotiate an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. They've never gotten Hegseth to try to do that. Hegseth is apparently hugely insecure about his position, and rightly so, and he would love to get rid of Driscoll, but he can't because he's a made man through J.D. Vance. So the thought is that he might be getting rid of every single person Driscoll trusts and likes and works with instead, which I'm sure is great for the Army if that's what's going on. They are the 2 options that are put out there. Do you have any thoughts about this or about Hegseth or about any of this area?
Yeah, I think the latter seems likely to me. Driscoll has gotten a lot of headlines, but I try not to spend too much time on the sort of criminology of the administration because it really does change day to day. it's sort of like background noise, and it's important to know some of the dynamics, but paying too much attention to this is just a waste of time because Trump literally enjoys the theater. This is well known, he will ask people about other staffers. Like,
yes.
Hey, what do you think of Hegseth? Do you think he's doing all right? Now, let's not forget Hegseth. In the most recent press conference, Trump said he's doing a great job and he is from Central Casting. But at the same time, Hegseth has made sure that he has leaked his political ambitions so that he can run for Congress, I think in Tennessee, if and when everything comes apart. Because you really did, I think, an important job of highlighting his insecurity on his job.
He strikes me as a perfect person for the House of Reps at this point in time.
Very much so.
Given what I described before of the direction it's taking. Yep.
One thing, sorry, I will say one thing I forgot to mention. I've talked to a number of veterans and a number of people who served in U.S. and Australian military, and that sort of warrior ethos where you ignore the rules of engagement, you ignore the bureaucracy, you just focus on lethality. That's not what they want in their militaries. These are militaries of democracies, and they are instilled from day one on rules of engagement and on basic human rights standards. Like, this is not somehow these are not militaries that want warriors who act unilaterally.
On the other hand, it's exactly what you want for a Sylvester Stallone movie. So let's hope Pete Hegseth makes one of those on his way to Congress. Fair enough. That's really interesting, though. I wasn't aware that they would be so forthright like that.
If you're a commanding officer, you don't want guys just going rogue.
No,
it makes complete sense.
Makes sense to me. All right, we only got 5 minutes, so I want to just touch on the court case. We're not going to get to the birthright citizenship case. I'm going to do that on the next PEP, and then on Thursday, Friday. But obviously not talking about Pam Bondi. That's going to be Thursday, Friday as well. So many things we're going to be talking about. That's why we have a bonus PEP, because there's a lot to talk about. But court case that made the news this week, or last week, about the National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration from defunding them. Trump defunded them. The executive defunded them last year. And turns out Judge Randolph Moss says you cannot do that. He said it was retaliatory against NPR's point of view, the zeroing out the funding. And he said it's difficult to conceive of clearer evidence that government action is targeted at viewpoints that the president does not like and seeks to squelch. And he said the First Amendment does not tolerate viewpoint discrimination and retaliation of this type. Now, that's wonderful. It may or may not be overruled. Should it be appealed? I'm not sure they're going to bother, because the truth is none of this matters, because while this stops Trump temporarily blocking the funding, Congress zeroed out the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for 2026 and 2027 last year, and they have now folded up. They folded up at the beginning of this year. They are the people who are responsible for distributing federal funds to NPR and PBS, and they've shut down. So it doesn't really matter what this judge has to say. They are no more. And it's just important for people to realise that this is all academic now, this court case. They have successfully destroyed this institution, at least this part of the institution. So do you have any thoughts about this or anything you want to say, Jared?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of passion about these topics because it depends on your perspective. But for myself and my own family, my family was raised with PBS in particular in the house. I was raised with Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and Reading Rainbow. And even before that, my own, I remember we had a painting in my family's home that my grandmother painted thanks to watching The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross, the guy with the hair on PBS. Right, and he was really amazing. And then since then, everything from Ken Burns documentaries to Ben Affleck's career launching pad, Voyage of the Mimi.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Gigli.
No. Or even our perhaps controversial rapper Drake, his career launching pad, Degrassi on PBS.
I didn't know he was in Degrassi. How about that? Is everyone in Canada in Degrassi? I get that impression.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Or just like amazing documentaries like Eyes on the Prize. Or even well-beloved characters, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Wishbone. I just PBS was huge on my on my childhood, and it's also something reruns. Or basically YouTube clips of Mr. Rogers is something that I went out of my way to show my kids when they were young as well. With that all said, it's quite interesting to see how much things have changed. PBS to this day remains one of the most trusted news sources in America. So do you know what the most trusted news source in America is? According to YouGov in 2025?
No.
The Weather Channel.
Hard to argue with that.
At 49%. After that, at 26%, BBC.
Yeah.
After that, at 25%, PBS. And so I think PBS has really been huge for so many Americans and continues to show fantastic high-quality television. With that said, just like all the other TV media consumption, what's happened to the demographics on PBS?
Old.
It's just old people.
Yeah.
It's less relevant, right?
Yeah.
I didn't no, you don't expose your kids to the young stuff anymore. We all expose young kids to like Netflix or YouTube Kids, or so it doesn't have the resonance.
Young people, TVs these days, I find, are just big screens to play dog videos to your dog when you're out of the house.
Yes, or in America, for your grandparents to get ads for Viagra and
those golf carts
and golf carts. Yeah. So yeah, if you look at PBS consumption in particular, it's shifted, and so I just want to say it's not as relevant. And cutting PBS and NPR government funding for them has been a hobby horse of Republicans for decades, and Republicans, just like Democrats, have shifted on a number of topics. But a few key ones have stayed the same, including abortion, including taxes, and cutting public funding for TV and radio.
I should say, it's not like NPR or PBS have been yanked off the air.
Exactly.
It's still around. It's just the Commission for Public Broadcasting that's been zeroed out. That's the part of the institution that is gone. That's going to affect a lot of small stations more than it's going to affect New York and so forth. And that's for another day. But they will. The new era is here, whether they like it or not. Jared, thank you so much, as always, for sticking till the end.
Always a pleasure.
Always late night pep. And I'll see you guys, we record on Thursday with Dr. M, I think, and you guys will undoubtedly be seeing it on Friday. Till then, stay peppy, Jared.
Stay peppy.
Stay peppy.